Good evening and welcome. My name is Shanna Cox. I'm calling tonight's planning board to order for Monday, July 27th, 2026. Can you please call the roll?
Darren Gallant.
Present.
Shanna Cox.
Here.
Zoe Lidstrom here. Lucy Bisson.
Here.
Penthea Burns.
Here.
Michael Marcotte.
Present.
And please let the record reflect that Alex Pine, Amy Smith, and Heidi Bertels are absent and excused.
Thanks. Please also let the record reflect that Darren, an associate member, will be a voting member throughout the evening tonight. Congratulations. Fun to have you. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, there are not.
Is there correspondence?
There has been quite a bit of correspondence since the last time we met, so I'm just going to briefly list out the topic areas where we've had correspondence by email. So Member Marcotte emailed on July 6th asking about the CSO project and received a response from staff. He also emailed on the 6th asking about the red shop and planning board recommendation. And then there was further correspondence from Member Lidstrom and then responses from staff. On July 7th, members Smith, Bertels, Beeson, and Cox provided emails to council members and staff regarding the possible sale of the red shop at 38 Water Street. There were emails on July 13th from IT department staff at the city regarding whether group emails were being received. There were emails regarding whether to hold an executive session, as well as providing comment to the public on, I don't have the date, I'm sorry, but last week, I believe it was the day of the council meeting, Member Smith sent a letter on behalf of the Lewiston Rowing regarding the item number 11 on the council agenda. And then there will be correspondence that will be handed out this evening by Director Connor regarding the development of a vacant building ordinance that was requested by Member Gallant.
Thank you. This evening we don't have any public hearings, so we're going to move into other business, starting with agenda item A, the planning board making a recommendation to the city council on the acquisition of a 1.44 acre portion of 9 Foss Road for the construction of a road to bypass the existing bridge on Jordan Road. This item is Shelley's.
Okay. So this is a request from Public Works, and we do have City Engineer Jeff Boley here in the audience who'd be happy to answer questions on this project. It is a request for a recommendation to the council on the purchase of a portion of 9 Foss Road. You can see on the survey map that's on the screen that it is a triangular portion at the corner of Foss Road and Jordan Road. And so this would be divided out and sold to the city. It is 1.44 acres in size. And the reason for this is that the bridge on Jordan Road that crosses No Name Brook is in, I'll just say, poor condition. Jeff can certainly get into more details if you're interested. And so the cost of doing a bypass road is significantly more cost efficient than replacing the bridge at this point in time. So this would be for the purpose of creating a road instead of repairing the bridge. So the property that is under consideration for purchase by the city has an assessed value of $27,000. The city has negotiated a purchase price of $35,000. The reason for that is that the current owner will need to redesign pathways from their parking lot and has other improvements that they'll have to do to adjust for the fact that that land will no longer be useful to them. I should have said that the owner is Pathway Vineyard Church. The funding for this project is coming from fiscal year 23 capital improvement plan funds that were allocated towards the bridge replacement, as well as subsequent fiscal year 26 capital improvement plans that were further allocated. The property itself certainly is, the use of the roadway is an allowed use, the public infrastructure, the size of the lot that would be created is conforming, frontage is conforming, and then the remaining land would be conforming. The staff review identifies the portions of the comprehensive plan that are relevant, and the use of public infrastructure is certainly consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan.
Thanks. The only thing I would add before I hand it over to you, sir, is that as we've noted from time to time, as chair of the planning board, I review de minimis requests. There is one associated with this, which essentially looks at the entirety of the original subdivision, which is many lots from 80 something.
88, I believe it is.
Yeah. And so while what you're seeing on this graphic here represents 2 lots and then the little triangle being cut out of one of those lots, we did approve it as de minimis because it's a very small structural change to a very large subdivision that was approved a very long time ago and for the public good, with all parties being agreeable. So for what that's worth, sir, anything you want to add to Shelley's overview?
No, she covered most of it. I can get into more details if you care, but it's been a 5-year process here to get to this point where we were originally looking at doing some relatively minor repairs to the abutments, and it turned out that was not going to be worth our money to put much money into that abutment. That's all old granite blocks. The bridge itself was replaced about 25 years ago, but the abutments are eroding in rough shape, and the bridge needs to be closed every time the water gets to a flood elevation, so that we can go out afterwards and check the abutments and make sure it's safe to reopen. That happened a couple times in 2024 and 23. Hasn't recently, but
You should knock on wood.
yeah, so turned out this was a really, we have a bridge or culverts right there on Foss Road. It's really doesn't make much sense to have 2 bridges 200 feet apart across the same stream. So we've been talking to the church for a couple of years now and trying to negotiate something that was agreeable to them without, really pressuring them or going to eminent domain or that sort of thing. They've been really cooperative, and this is seems to be the best solution for about half the price of what it would cost us for a new bridge. So,
Thanks. Any questions from the board? Mr. Marcotte?
Series of questions. Will there be a complete decommissioning and removal of the old bridge?
that's the plan, yes.
So it'll be brought right back to nature?
Right, because it does have a little bit of flood impact where it's next down to get under the bridge, and we remove the remaining portion of the road and turn that back into green space too.
What's the bridge on Foss Road like, condition-wise?
It's 4 metal culverts right now that were installed, I think, in the late 80s when that Foss Road subdivision went through. So, but they're currently in decent shape. No need for any work anytime soon.
And remembering that area before it was subdivided, there was a outdoor theater, Lewiston Theater, if I remember right, Lucy? Lisbon Road.
Lisbon
Theater.
Road Drive-In.
Drive-in, yeah, there we
Yeah,
go,
the drive-in
drive-in. Now, Foss Road, I know, not Foss Road, Jordan Road, once upon a time went all the way out through to the next town over. Is that still the case, or has it been dead-ended?
The last house is in Lisbon, yes, but it ends after that, and then it's farm fields for a ways, so.
Because it used to be passable 40 years, 50 years ago, and I thought that it kind of degraded over the years, so it's not a destination road to get to the
No, there's
next
only, I think, 3 houses on the road, so There are a few large developable lots, potentially someday, but it's such a low use right now. Maine DOT won't contribute any funds towards it because it's under 100 trips a day using the road, so.
Yeah, I believe that there's some abutting properties to the left of Jordan Road that shows up on the Lewiston's disposition list every so many years, trying to sell them off because they're undersized for development. I was trying to understand the cost and figures. So it's 370, well, it's 372 or 370,000. It's available from the 2023 capital improvement item.
I think
Right.
the 26 is the 370,000, and then I think it was 1.5 million was the 2023. That was when they thought they'd have to replace the whole bridge.
No, actually, we got 350, 360 approved in '23. That was for the repairs to the current bridge that we originally thought we could do. Turned out
You couldn't.
we couldn't.
Yeah.
So then in '26, we asked for another 370 to be able to build the bypass road. We never asked for the whole 1.5 million.
What I'm trying to understand here is, okay, going back to the language, there's 372,000 remaining in the 2023 funds, which means that there's 370 in the 2026 funds. Combination of the two is $742,000. Is that adequate for the project? Will there be residual money after this?
That's pretty close to what we're estimating the project to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking that the project was around 370 and trying to reconcile the two different amounts. So it's closer to
Yeah.
the 740.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions from the board? Okay, then I'd be looking for a motion.
Just a comment, I think this is an excellent use of funds instead of building a bridge that keeps deteriorating. I make a motion pursuant to Article 7, Section 4H of the Zoning and Land Use Code to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council for the acquisition of a 1.44 acre portion of 9 Foss Road.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by.
Second.
That was a very quiet
Lost
second
my
by
voice
Darren.
suddenly.
Thanks. I would also just add one comment, which is usually this board are shrewd, critical, as we should be, about disposition costs, particularly when it's more than an assessed value. But the explanation you gave is great, and I think it is worth $7,000, $8,000 to be good neighbors and to find a workable solution for everyone. So, yeah, that's appreciated. Any other discussion on the item on the floor? Okay. Can you call the roll?
Darren Gallant,
Yes.
Shanna Cox.
Yes.
Zoe Lidstrom, yes. Lucy Bisson.
Yes.
Penthea Burns.
Yes.
Michael Marcotte.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes. Just a thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with your knee.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. Poor guy. Just a note for our audience who's here tonight. Normally, we do not allow public comment during other business, and it's both listed as and was promoted as a public forum, and so we will be offering public comment on item C, which might feel a little confusing to what item B is. And so we'll hear item B first, then we'll hear our presentation, and then we'll allow public comment, just in terms of how that lays out with the agenda item here. Okay, so other business B, update on the status of the safety and mobility study for Main Street, Sabata Street, Canal Street, and downtown Lisbon Street by Tool Design. And I didn't know if there was anything staff wanted to do to preface this item or invite up our representative from Tool.
No, but we will pull up the presentation for them.
Great, thanks. I think the next two items are yours, sir, ma'am, both of you. Feel free to come on up. We'll allow public comment after your presentation for the Lisbon Street portion. Is that okay?
This is the first one? No, this is the second one.
We're going to do the other one first.
Okay. it as the slideshow version like that. Is that good?
You're both welcome to sit up, and would just ask that you introduce yourself, name, affiliation, before you get underway.
Hi, my name's Lucy Gibson. I'm a principal traffic engineer with Tool Design Group, and we've been working with a committee, I'll have a lot more details on it, over the last almost 2 years now on the Lewiston Transportation Master Planning Study.
And my name's Carl Epic. I'm also with Tool Design. And I've been working on a project that was funded through ATRC to look at what we've been calling Outer Lisbon Street, basically from the end of the Lisbon Street portion that Lucy's been working on out past Alfred A. Plord Parkway and Westminster Street.
Great, thank you. Take it away.
Great. So since the study that I've been working on is a little further along, really very close to the end, Carl's is more in the midstream. We thought I'd start off and then pass it over to Carl. I have I think we both have a lot of material to show. My plan is to go through it kind of quickly, but if you either want to come back to things or pause for questions, I'd welcome you to do that, because I don't want to leave people behind if I'm using too much jargon or anything like that.
Thanks.
So,
So then for the planning board, a clarifying question before they move on, but if you're asking like a substantive question, write it down and we'll hold it. If you need to write the title of the slide so that you can remember which one to go back to.
yeah, and we'll have as much time as you want to take at the end. So the project I've been working on with a number of wonderful people here at, and I jump over to here, with the city, we had Paul Niehoff, Kevin Gagnier, Jeff Bewley, Shelley Norton, and people from Maine DOT, Matt Drost and Claire Winter, our team at Tool Design, plus a number of other people were contributing, but Carl and I were both involved. We had as a subcontractor Viewshed. They are a public engagement and landscape architect team, and they had a big role in engagement. We also had Jim Tassi Consulting, and he worked specifically on the demonstration project component that we all got to see last summer. I'm going to get back to our agenda. I want to just give a quick overview about the study, some of the things that we learned about Lewiston streets today, some of the design goals and principles that we have been putting forward into our design recommendations, and probably focus more attention on the recommendations, because that's kind of where we are in the study, but want to make sure everybody kind of comes along with how we got there. So our study area for this project included 4 corridors: Main Street from the bridge up to the Russell Street interchange, Canal and Lisbon Street between Main Street and where they come back down together, and then at some point that transitions into Carl's study going further out, and then Sabata Street from Main Street out to Grove Street. So it's quite an extensive area, and so it limited how much detail we got in any one place, but I think we got pretty far along. So a little bit of background on this. This is from the city's initial framing of the project. We want to identify short-term and potential transformative transportation recommendations to improve safety, accessibility, resiliency, equity, and economic development. We're looking at lane use and layout of streets and intersections, complete street design principles, looking at traffic signals and whether we need new ones or are they outdated, and other measures for access management. And where practical and appropriate, incorporate complete streets design standards and aesthetic updates to promote safety, beautification, and a sense of place. We focused a lot on building on past work. You've done so much great work here. The RIMP update was one of the big factors, especially for the recommendations along Canal Street. Just wrapping up as we were starting was the Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan. That was a regional effort of both Lewiston and Auburn, but it provided a lot of great data for us to work from. There's a bike network plan from ATRC that we definitely fed into our study. The Heads Up Lewiston, this was a street safety initiative that had a couple iterations in the last few years that provided a lot of good short-term recommendations. And the ATRC Complete Streets Guide, which laid out some initial ideas for some of these corridors. So sorry, the fonts are all different than but I think they're all working. So one of the things, safety is obviously always one of the primary things we always look at. And we had a lot of great data from that Safe Streets for All action plan. We were able to parse out just the survey results from our corridors. And these are some of the things that were most on people's mind as what made them feel unsafe. And I kind of color-coded them a little bit. Of the top 3 are really about driver behavior, speeding, distracted driving, and people not yielding to me. That's especially considering someone trying to cross the street, say. The next set of highly frequent comments were missing bike lanes, missing sidewalks, cracked and uneven street, and poor lighting. So a little more about the network and maintenance. And then finally, a number of other areas too that all contribute to a lot of people feeling unsafe. One of the things we took away from this was that safety and speeds are really the primary concerns that people had, and that's whether they're driving or walking or biking, however you're getting around. And driver behavior was really considered one of the root causes of the unsafe conditions. So what that's indicated to us is we really need to focus on street designs that will reduce speeds and really get drivers' attention on the people, other people using the road. And there are some techniques to do that, basically slowing people down and making sure they can see all of the things going on in a busy street network like many of these streets are in your city. This is just data coming in from the Safety Action Plan again, but it really showed the big takeaways. Main Street between the bridge and Sabata Street was really one of the hot spots of like glowing, and the yellow you can see on the upper map that really has a lot of crashes. So but all of the corridors are showing up on this heat map of crashes. So one of the big exciting parts of the project was the demonstration project, and it was great to see it back in the street this year. Would love to hear comments and questions on it. So again, coming into the project, we knew that a priority was to really take this project. Testing it out on the ground was the big idea that we did, not the whole corridor. A lot of people were concerned it's so short. The eventual plan is definitely for it to go all the way up and down, but extending it further had a lot of technical challenges, potentially relate to the signal, that will take a little more time to work through. But it really was, people seemed to love it who were using it, and one of the really neat things that we learned about it was by collecting speed data. This is a little bit tricky to read, but I think the main thing to look at is that orange line, which is the percentage or number of people that were speeding about midway through the chart where you see the big drop in the blue. That's when the project went in. So before the demonstration project went in, about 48% of the people were observing a speed limit and a little more than half speeding. Afterwards, 85% of the drivers were driving within the speed limit and only 15% speeding. And that is just great data that contributes so much to safety, because speed is really the number one thing that we have to concern. We had a really great public engagement event called Reimagining Our Streets, where we got a lot of people coming through different booths and questionnaires and activities that gave us a lot of great feedback on what people think of the ideas. We present some initial ideas. One of the things that this was done just near the end of the Canal Street demonstration project, and people gave us their ideas of what they liked about it. And when we asked if that should be extended the full length of Canal Street, we got a resounding yes, agreed with that. So again, the plan is to go further down the street, but we really got really positive feedback, which I think has helped, gave the public works staff the initiative they needed to put it back in this year. Okay, there we go. That's just some more photos from the event. Another bit of information, another thing in the scope of our study was to look at, should any of these streets that are now one-way be converted to two-way, or what should that, what should their future be? And we've done both technical analyses and looking at measurements, dimensions, but also wanted to get public feedback on the people that use these streets. And we got a pretty good set of results that showed both Lisbon and Canal and Park, people really said, to different degrees, but keep them one way as they are. And that kind of makes sense with the narrow width and the disruption of parking and other things that would be happen by converting them to two-way. But people like the idea of converting Bates Street, Hammond Street, and Middle Street to two-way. And those are all shorter sections of one-way street that I'm sure had a good reason to do them when they were done, but maybe no longer need to be one-way streets and will really help unlock some circulation. So those are recommendations as far as that goes. I already kind of jumped to the one I keep moving. So we had a lot of feedback study. I haven't, it's all going to be more detailed in our report that's coming out, but I wanted to get focused more now on what are we doing with the information for recommendations. So a few things to review first is talking about some of the design principles and goals that we have been thinking about and looking at the streets. One is something that called a road diet. I don't know if that's a familiar term. So it is, okay. So there are a number of these corridors. Main Street and Sabata Street in particular are 4 lanes, and the design of them, especially when there's no median and no left turn lane, really creates a lot of potential for conflicts and blocking visibility of pedestrians and whatnot. So by considering a road diet, we can reduce speeds, conflicts, crashes, improve pedestrian safety, and potentially provide room for other modes of traffic. It's also very much, Maine DOT is very much on board with taking a really serious look at this, and they've been involved in the study the whole way. Speed and safety are really key elements of this, and the reduction of speed is one of the big reasons road diets do work well. And the speeds are really what have a huge outcome in crashes, especially with somebody walking or biking. The lower the speeds, the much more greater likelihood everybody walks away and gets home safely at the end of the day. We did have discussion about speed enforcement, and police enforcement is definitely can be a piece of street safety, but by creating street designs that really help reinforce the safe speeds is going to be more effective, not require so much time, and more proactive and more kind of encouraging safe behavior. So those are some of the things that we really want to bring into our recommendations. We've also taken a real close look at congestion, capacity, and the recommendations we have were all scrutinized and subject to a lot of traffic analysis. One of the things that we want to emphasize is that at some of these intersections, they're really designed for much higher volumes than we see today, and whether those volumes were even here in the past or that was just what was planned when they were laid out. The results of that are higher speeds and passing and really a lot of the safety issues that you're seeing today. And one of the things that's going to be important as these ideas work their way forward, and again, Maine DOT will be involved, but it's like some of the recommendations we're making might make things a little less free-flowing or a little more congested during a peak hour of the day. And I just showed that chart on the left to show a typical traffic pattern at one of your busy intersections. You can see the afternoon, that's a daily pattern from midnight to midnight. And in the afternoon peak hour, the traffic is quite a bit higher, but if we're willing to tolerate a little congestion for that 1 hour, you can have a safer street for the whole 24 hours. And that's a decision that you'll consider, and Maine DOT and whatever, there'll be a discussion.
Can you tell us what it says in the orange box at the bottom?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Can you tell us what it says in the orange box at the bottom? The text is going outside and it's white on white.
Yeah, I think that, again, sometimes the fonts, I think if we accept some additional congestion here, we can have a safer street for the entire day. I can't even quite read it all.
Thanks, that's great.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So, anyway. And I want to talk a little bit about level of service, because one of the things I'll get to in a little bit is we did a big survey, and a lot of people really like these ideas, but their main concern was traffic congestion. And when we did the survey, we didn't have the ability to get people completely up to date in the analysis, but we've done a lot of traffic modeling, and we feel very comfortable that the recommendations will not create any unreasonable congestion, and they're in line with what Maine DOT's done. So what I'm showing here is just a chart with all the different intersections we've looked at in a network, and then the level of service, which is a grade from A to F, with A being like free flow and F being gridlock, and, we're kind of everything in between. What we really want to target, one of the problems with having this A through F scale is you think A is better, but in fact, in an urban street, you don't want to design for wide open roads at the peak hour. You want to have it filled up and maybe even a little congested in the peak hour, and then that's a much more efficient plan, and it's actually much safer. So when we look at what we're designing for, we want to target something like the C and D level of service. And what you can see in the chart, I know it's a lot of detail and there'll be time to peruse it all in the report, but the purple shade there are all the streets that are really over-designed, too much extra capacity, a lot of room for change. And so the ones that are green are kind of in a good target place, and the ones that are, only two that are E at this point are at Spatus and Russell Street, where it's pretty congested in the afternoon peak hour. And then we've also looked out 20 years in the future. We're not looking just at today. And
Sorry, can I make you go back to that slide?
yep,
It is a bit of a clarifying question, or even just a footnote for later, but we have reviewed on a number of occasions development that outputs onto East and drives traffic to East and Russell, as well as just beyond Grant's Bakery on the other side, which I think is like the Russell connector
It's the
for a
connector that
smidge.
connects to Farwell.
Yeah, essentially the Farwell Street neighborhood, but the Charles Street development, we're anticipating a number of new units of housing that were approved, and we heard quite a bit from residents in the neighborhood about this specific area, and they feel that congestion.
That's the E corner
Yeah.
that she's got marked up there.
Well, and so that's one question is, is the E actually the spot of which doesn't have an outlet, like goes into the bank?
Yeah.
So it
it's-
doesn't count, like there is
it doesn't
no-
count any additional. It's just existing and then background, like
The one that
we
doesn't
assume
go to
some increase.
Farwell. It's the dead end one that goes to the bank, and then there's the one that does go to Farwell.
Even the one at the credit union.
Yeah, I think the credit union one is the EE, which is essentially saying that there's,
It says Russell and Sabatis. Sabatis and Russell, if you follow.
That's the one that's in gray, yeah.
Yeah, and
If
that's a horrible, horrible corner. I
Yeah.
live on Sabatis Street, I go by it umpteen times, and it's horrible,
so what is E for a grade?
bad.
For E,
Yeah,
well, that means it's getting close to F, which is more like where you'd have real, waiting several times for lights to change, like throughout the hour. That happens now, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
At sometimes all over town. And so really getting where the volume, and this is looking at very detailed information about how the signals operate. So
yeah, that was a big part of the
there's
conversation.
potentially a lot of efficiency can be gained by just, retiming signals and that kind of thing. But it's, the pinch point in this whole network is what we have seen.
Yeah,
And these were all counts that were done 2024 and 2025, which for our standards, that's pretty recent,
Right.
so.
and I can assume, I guess this is a question for staff as much as it is for you guys, but I can assume that the 2045 data assumes the developments that have been approved and are in the pipeline. Obviously, we can't know what we don't know, but we do know what we, okay.
Yeah,
Great.
so it's like looking
Yeah.
at, yeah.
Some members of our board are newer since we approved that and heard that public comment, and so I did want to just flag it in the context. Thanks.
So now getting into some of the recommendations. I'm going through by each corridor. Canal Street, this is going from Main Street to down back to where it meets Lisbon from left to right. So some key things, we had the demonstration project going from Main to Chestnut, and then the recommendation was to continue that demonstration project all the way down to where it rejoins Lisbon. That does require some signal work at Chestnut and at Cedar Street. So those will be things that would have a little more work to do before that could really happen. Some other things that we looked at were bike lane connections on Ash Street and Pine Street. It's a contraflow direction. We've shown them in all of them. They don't necessarily all need to be done, but they're a way to get it, you're going to have a wonderful bike facility on Canal Street just to make it easy to get up to Lisbon Street if you're on bike or on foot. And potentially a sort of optional thing is looking at Cedar having a two-way operation is something that is feasible and might be beneficial, again, for circulation and getting people. So, and then really reconstructing, doing permanent construction in a more way consistent with what you have in the Riverfront Island Master Plan. An example of what that might look like on the upper right photo. And here's again the rendering that's very much consistent with what we looked at, what works in the construction plans that we've drawn up. So, very, very high level cost estimates might be something like $6 million to get for each half of the project. And those are not engineered cost estimates yet, but can help for planning level purposes of trying to go on to implementation. And then here are some of the drilling into the design plans. The lower left shows the existing condition, and the main drawing there would be full implementation where you'd have a wider sidewalk with landscape along the edge of the canal, the two-way separated bike lanes, they're about 5 feet each total, and then separated from traffic. And then each intersection is really where the tricky parts get to make it easy and safe for people, bikes, and cars to get back and on and off Canal Street. So this is what Pine Street looks like. Cedar Street's even a little more complicated. But again, having Canal Street as a one-lane street, we'd have the Cedar Street sort of right turn ramp that comes. The curved ramp would be one lane, and that could then therefore have a nice wide sidewalk, walkway, promenade along the canal, which could be a nice public space. Cedar Street we've sketched in here as two-way, which is possible within the geometry. It's not required by any means. And then again, the bike lanes coming through, and we have done some routing of large trucks, knowing the kind of traffic that has to get on and off the island, and that is considered in design. Those pinkish areas are what we call truck aprons. They'd be something that a truck can roll over, but a car would tend to go around. So Lisbon Street was the other big corridor downtown. In general, people liked it one way, so we haven't made any suggestions of major changes except potentially south of Cedar Street. But one of the recommendations is to have it just be one lane going northbound of travel. The volumes are very much within that range, and that would both allow a continuous bike lane and reduce speeds and increase the pedestrian visibility of crossings. A couple things that we also gathered from both observing and public input was that as you're traveling north on Lisbon at Pine Street and Ash Street, there are turning lanes, and that requires cars to have to move around. The turning lanes really aren't necessary. There's not enough turning traffic, and it would allow removing those and just keeping one lane, of course allowing turns, but you don't need the separate lane. It allows the bike lane to come consistently all the way through. And a final thing that we did uncover in our work, and the city's also been looking at this, is this traffic signals at Ash, Pine, and Chestnut are all not really warranted by traffic. Traffic's low enough, and because they're very simple intersections, those could be converted to all-way stop signs. And so I think at this point, the city's not moving rapidly towards doing that, but it would be an option in the future. And here's just a cross section. This is like a slice across the road showing the arrangement of between Spruce and Chestnut, where it's now 2 lanes, and we'd recommend it to be 1 travel lane for vehicles and 1 bike lane with enough room as a separation from the cars. There are different thoughts on whether we should have the bikes against the curb and the parking out more in the street. That does bring maintenance issues, and the speeds here with this arrangement should be pretty low and comfortable for biking. So, and this is just showing where those turning lanes are, but I saw a lot of heads nodding, so I think you know what that what's planned for that. So now looking at Main Street, here's a map of Main Street from the river going up to Sabata Street and on up towards Russell Street. We have at Lincoln Street, that first red circle, we have some proposal to reconfigure the intersection, remove the slip lane. Again, that'll make things slower, better for pedestrians, and a more orderly flow. And then same thing at Sabata Street, kind of a major reconfiguration. And on the cross-section below, generally speaking, we'd doing all the traffic modeling, having 2 lanes of through traffic coming in from Auburn, going up Main Street is going to work at most of the intersections, but really we only need 1 lane in the opposite direction, because at any point you only have 1 lane of traffic feeding into it. So that's a typical section would have 2 lanes northbound, which is sort of going to the right on this drawing, and then 1 lane the other direction. Here's Main and Lincoln. Again, for pedestrian safety, speeds and whatnot, tightening up the corner and making it more of a conventional intersection will make it safer for people to cross on all sides of the intersection. We'd have room for a median refuge and a crosswalk. Some potential more public space. There's such nice features on the other corners, so that kind of could be continued all around. Bike lanes could then be provided in both directions that are separated from traffic with a buffer and potentially flex posts depending on the exact locations. We did take a quick peek at the idea of a roundabout. There was a lot of interest, and one could potentially fit, but what the group that was looking at this carefully and for public input, we didn't see the reason to spend, it's a lot of money, a lot of construction in areas that are already really nicely landscaped. So that isn't a recommendation that is promoted, but it is something that could, if there's a time in the future that wanted to be revisited, a roundabout could work really well in terms of handling the traffic and providing kind of a gateway and lower speeds. So going up to Main and Sabattis, this was a intersection we, observed and heard a lot about. The slip lane of particular concern, the lack of bike infrastructure, having the 2 lanes kind of shooting north and then having to merge just north of the intersection, the high speeds in passing, and then the double left turn from Sabattis onto Main is definitely a hot, something that produces more crashes that may not be necessary. So here is the proposed design. So it has, for Main Street, there'd be 2 lanes approaching, but we'd close the slip lane and make a right turn only lane, but from the main line of Main Street, and 1 through lane in each direction. Turning lanes would still be there. We would do, one of the concerns that people had is about bike signals and the right turn lane, and I'll show in the next slide how we'd be managing that to really keep it safe for bikes. So a single left turn lane from Sabata Street too, because there's only 1 lane on the other spot, and then really some nice opportunities for public space or landscaping there in front of the temple. So getting into some of the geeky traffic engineering, what I have in the bottom here is a phasing diagram, and I did want to sort of emphasize this a bit because that was a concern. When we showed the drawing, people worried about, well, all the right turning traffic from Main Street onto Sabattis is going to hit the bikes, and that's definitely a concern, and it is a really high movement. But what we have done the traffic modeling from and proposed for the intersection design would be a phasing system where if you go left to right on those boxes, you'd first have, this is the sequence of the traffic light, you'd have the left turns going from Main Street in their own phase. Then you'd have the through traffic on Main Street, but the right turning traffic would be stopped. It would not have a green light. It'd be a red arrow. And that's when you'd have the bikes crossing. Then you move on to you have the right turning traffic, so it has its own lane, so it'll have plenty of traffic stacked up, ready to go. At the same time, Sabata Street goes, so there's no conflicts. And then you'd have the pedestrian crossing. So that's what we've assumed in our traffic model. It does work with capacity, and it'll be, all these things will probably feel a little tighter and more congested, but not any unreasonable amount of congestion at all. And really, safer and more orderly and really more efficient, designed in response to the volumes. So again, it's that, might feel a little pinch at the peak, but certainly it's well within a reasonable level. I think right now it's C and B in the AM and PM. This would go to C and D, a little more of a hit in the afternoon. But D is a very reasonable in that level of service target for an urban street system in a downtown area like this. And it does meet Maine DOT guidelines. They're very willing to accept level of service D as something they find it typically. So. We did look quickly at a roundabout here, and really the other design we think will work really well, and the cost of a roundabout and impacts would be pretty high here, because with accommodating the large trucks, and it's kind of a tight spot. So that didn't really advance further. But all right, Sabata Street was then the next corridor, and one of the reasons this was really important is it's going to be resurfaced by Maine DOT in a couple of years. Jeff, do you know is it 2028 maybe?
Potentially 27.
Oh, potentially 27. So the recommendations that we come up with might potentially have a near-term implementation opportunity. So what we're calling Inner Sabatis, which is from Main Street out to around East Avenue, where it's already 2 lanes in one direction, but we could reconfigure it to have the parking's not heavily utilized, and with some reconfiguration, you could have bike lanes on each side and parking on one side. Which side of the road the parking could shift as you go down, depending on what the land uses are and the needs. Sebastian College was a particularly focused because there's been several crashes there, and it's a complicated intersection, and I'm sure you all know from trying to drive through. So, and I don't know why my screen has a little animation, but after looking at a lot of different options, we looked at mini roundabouts and lots of different ways to sort things out, but this is the recommendation that really garnered the most support of the city, Maine DOT, and others that we heard. Basically, tightening up all the corners, and one of the big changes to circulation is that Horton Street would become one-way northbound. You wouldn't be able to turn in on Horton Street, and that really helps alleviate congestion and kind of simplify all the different movements. So if you're on Horton, you'd come up to the intersection, you'd be able to turn right only, and you wouldn't have a signal. And it's a very low volume, so it's not really affecting a large number of people, and there's plenty of other ways to get over there. But basically, we'd have a left turn lane from Sabatis onto College, which isn't there now, and that will actually help alleviate pedestrian crossings and kind of reduce pressure on people to feel like I have to turn left, I'm holding up traffic and everyone's behind me. If you get your own lane, you can kind of relax and wait till you feel like you have the right opportunity. So we think that'll be a helpful thing. And otherwise, it's really tightening it up, slowing it down, and making sure pedestrians are more visible. And there's some nice opportunities then for public space on some of the wider sidewalks. Sabatis Ashton Central, there's just a brand new curb ramp project coming in, and with its already single lanes, which is not really a road diet candidate, so no major changes, but we did come up with a long-term scheme of a small roundabout that could fit in there and really work well with the way the volumes are in circulation. The idea of this roundabout is you'd get the bikes could ride through it with traffic if they're more confident riders, but the route around would be wide enough for less confident riders to go around the roundabout and not have to go mixing with traffic.
Can I ask a question on this slide? Can I ask a question on this slide?
Sure.
The, right there by Central and Sabatis is stationed a crosswalk guard in the mornings, and it's one of the few spots that gets a human and a stop sign to help manage traffic, and pretty much any middle schooler that lives in the Tree Streets is walking through this intersection to get to the middle school each day and then home, and it can be a little bit of mayhem. I live like a block from this intersection, drive through there regularly, and so would something like a roundabout provide more kind of pedestrians, like a storage space for the people to be collecting and then to transition all at once to Central Ave where the middle school is? Would it create some additional kind of pedestrian opportunities? Because right now, that's how it's used by the crossing guard. Like, they'll wait until the traffic has gone by mostly through a signal, then they'll just stop everything in all directions, and folks kind of walk from whichever way down towards Central. Would that create a safe spot for that?
So, well, I mean, the way it should work is that all the cars slow down quite a bit with the design, and so having to have people wait so long is probably not necessary, but you'd probably want to designate the main route for kids, so you probably don't want to have 5 crossing guards
Right.
on all of them, but I don't think it would necessarily work terribly differently, but.
Thanks.
So now looking at the outer part of Sabattis, which this is showing from Central to Grove, we looked at a road diet and did a pretty detailed analysis with all the signalized intersections there, and again, informing the main DOT implementation, which might be as soon as next year. We did a level of service, again, the same kind of using the 2024, 2025 counts. We found that most of the intersections are currently C or better. That means they might be potentially kind of over-designed. The intersection with East is at level of service D. That's getting a little congestion. Again, the one with Russell is the most kind of critical one at level of service E. And I think that fits the people's expectations. So with the road diet, we got a few drops. So Russell would stay at level service E. We're not trying to make it a better level of service, so it'll still probably feel kind of congested, but it would be operating differently. We'll show the details. And then I think it's East and Randall and Old Green would drop down to level service D. Again, very acceptable for that peak hour traffic. The others actually stay at C or better. There's really ample capacity, and those are really the only intersections that have much constraint. So here's Sabattis and Russell. I guess I don't have a existing diagram, but what right now it's 2 through lanes in each direction and then a double turn lane from Russell. And what we would propose is 1 through lane in each direction on Sabattis Street, and then 1 right turn lane that would extend up to Russell Street. And we'll look at the same kind of signal phasing as we saw on Sabattis Street. And then bike lanes would fit through on each direction. The Russell Street approach, coming southbound, would have 1 left turn lane instead of 2 that it has today. So, and really no change on the other direction. Do you have a question, or?
Yeah, I do. I live just past Grove Street, so I go by this intersection all the time. The left turn, now, are you going to add a left turn signal to that intersection?
Yeah.
At the Sabattis going out?
Going out to get onto Russell?
Right.
Yeah.
Because right now, there is no left turn, and it's a bottleneck because people want to turn onto Russell, and the traffic's coming downtown, and traffic's too fast, and it's very dangerous intersection at this point. If it had a turn, left turn signal there, that would alleviate it.
And that's exactly, so when you think of it, it's right now 2 lanes, but 1 lane gets blocked.
Because.
And it's
somebody
really
else
only
did.
1 lane. So this is sort of formalizing that and make it safer and more predictable. And you can't have that left turn phase unless you have the left turn lane. So
Right.
that is definitely something that.
One of the
would,
worst parts is that the left turn lane is actually also a straight lane. And so
Right.
not only do you get stuck, but you have somebody 2 cars up or 2 cars behind you jamming into right.
Trying to
cutting
get
people
around.
off, trying to
Yeah.
get
Oh, yeah. it's-
unexpectedly.
It's a very dangerous
And that's what
area.
causes so many crashes is
Yeah.
the weaving around on those kind of 4-lane roads.
Absolutely.
And that would really be
That's a
something that would go
good
away.
improvement, I think.
And in this case, we're showing, again, for the concern, again, of biking going westbound, we would do the same kind of phasing as we talked about Sabattis, where the through phase on Sabattis, that would be, bikes would cross with no conflicts, and then the right turns from Sabattis up to Russell would go during the same time as the Russell Street approach.
Okay.
So, um, this is like, well, I'm going to skip past this one, just because the other thing that we've looked in the long term, what could work really well here is what we call a flared entry roundabout or hybrid roundabout. A single lane roundabout would not provide enough capacity for the amount of traffic, but something like this where you have one lane entering, but it flares to 2 lane to get around the roundabout and then back to 1 lane. The example on the left is it's actually in Wisconsin, but it's designed by a roundabout designer who's done other work in Maine, and kind of, so something that's just kind of an example. And the diagram on the right is what we'd recommend for this particular location. So that's something that would take, here, I have a little diagram here. It would cut into the corners of the property. It would require some right-of-way. It would not need to cut into any buildings. The northwest corner, the gas pumps are gone, so that could be
It's just a
maybe
canopy.
potentially. So that's something to think about in the long term, but they are big projects that take time to cost, but you've got to start somewhere.
And
so.
a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think the main DOT project's probably not going to come and do that next year, but it might be something that can get onto their program. So. And then the intersection of Randall and Old Green, that was another one where we heard a lot of concerns and complaints. It kind of curved, you have 2 lanes crossing at a curve through the middle of the intersection, and a lot of crashes and kind of driver stress, I guess I'd say. And again, the lack of left turn lanes, especially for the ones for the westbound direction, which has that same problem of weaving and stopping. So the recommendation here is left turn lanes in both directions on Sabattis, and then a single through lane. We've also included a right lane from Sabattis coming eastbound because of the volume suggests that would work well. And then bike lanes that then can fit through. Not really any changes to Randall and Old Green. But the driving through should be less stressful and a lot safer, and not having those side-by-side curving road conflicts.
The problem with that intersection, and it's the drivers, there's, the lines are there and everything. It's the people taking a left onto Old Green Road. Instead of stopping where the line says you should stop, they continue right into the middle of the intersection, so that the people coming down from going east don't have the room, or even now there's 2 lanes heading east. And so the one in the middle lane gets cramped because this guy is way out where the heck he doesn't belong.
Yeah.
And so that causes issues at that intersection.
And if you've only got 1 lane, being able to pass through.
I think that
Right,
will
yeah.
help. That
There'd be
can't-
more
yeah,
room
it
and
most
less trip.
definitely cannot hurt.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
very
I know,
stressful.
I approve it. I think it's
feel,
great. I
so.
think it's great.
And maybe in the long run, a roundabout might be something to consider here. We've just kind of sketched out what the diameter of it might look like. It wouldn't affect any buildings. It would require property. But,
Wait, can you go back 1 second?
Yep.
Sorry. This is for staff, because when we did the commercial corridor review in this area, and then we were like looking parcel by parcel, I'm not entirely sure that we didn't consider,
Are you talking about rezoning?
when we were doing the review for rezoning, but
Okay.
this,
Yeah, little wedge.
that little wedge was like undevelopable and suggested to be held for something like this. And so we just would want to,
No, I think it
Yeah.
was sold.
did we sell
Yeah,
it?
it was recently sold and combined, and it was
To
2
another-
lots.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Anyway,
was-
this is the kind of thing we want to be thinking about, though,
Right.
right? Is,
Yeah, it would have been,
would have
plenty
been nice
ahead.
to have known.
Yeah, hey,
Crystal balls and all that
Yeah.
jazz. Please, carry on.
sorry.
We can't know.
and the circle we've drawn there is kind of conservative and maybe more generous than it needs to, but you want to
Right.
kind of know what it might need. That's kind of early, so. So we did a survey where we shared a lot of these design drawings that you just saw with the public. We got over 400 responses, which was really great. Lots of great comments and feedback. Generally, the areas support people like the pedestrian safety, the lower speeds, better bicycle accommodations, simplified traffic movements and being more attractive. And the concerns were traffic congestion due to travel lanes. And I know that's again, I think we'll be able to address that in the report, that we don't expect unreasonable congestion, and that's something that is natural to be concerned about. A concern was low demand for the bicycle facilities, and what we see is when it's unsafe to bike, only if the people have no choice but to bike, do it, and you could really build up. It's such a nice bikeable scale in Lewiston. Things are kind of the right distance apart that you might really see a big growth once the network reaches kind of a critical point. So, tax cost and taxpayer impacts, that's always going to be a concern, and parking loss and emergency vehicle access are all things that can be really addressed in the design. I won't read all of these, but we got some really nice positive feedback and comments that just people seemed really excited about the design plans. And then, a lot of concerns or some negative, there's always people, you're never going to get unanimous consent, but people thinking it's too much focused on bikes, they were concerned about that. Congestion were definitely a concern, and again, we'll be able to address this in the report in a little more detail. And a lot of concern about maintenance, like things aren't maintained well now, let's do that first before we build things, but really the study is looking forward and ahead, and we have to, streets get rebuilt every now and then, and that's what this is more focused on.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
One of the comments was about curb cuts and accessibility for people in chairs, and the plans and recommendations that you're making, is that accommodating for those kinds of things to be maintained?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's really required in design. This is just a response to the question that we asked about each design, if you liked it, don't like it, or it needs work. And in all of them, the like it was sometimes a majority outright, or at least the plurality, what most people liked. And then, needs some work, people kind of made suggestions of what to improve, which we've definitely taken into account. And so maybe a quarter to a third don't like that, and that is sort of what people's reaction to change is, so that's not surprising, and it doesn't mean that they shouldn't happen, but we do need to just pay attention to what people's concerns are and what they said as it goes forward. And we've got a great basis of data on that now. A quick table of the, and I think things got a little off course, but basically this is that same table showing as we go to the 2045 no build to the proposed, which is the third column and sixth column. We have a little less purple, which is actually a good thing. We're maybe less overbuilt. We don't really see any big congestion areas. Russell Street, again, is the one that's of critical path, but nothing else really falls into that level. So we're pretty comfortable that the traffic congestion analysis shows that it would work and be reasonable. So, and that's it. Sorry, that was a lot of material, but thanks for your patience. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Lucy.
Well, I took notes. I didn't want to interrupt the flow, and then we started interrupting. So if you go back to the Lisbon Street slide, it's relatively early. Let's see here. Yeah.
So is this one or is overview?
Let's see. Yeah, that one. So according to this, in the orange, from Cedar Street to Canal Street, where Lisbon joins Canal, you're proposing to make it two-way.
Well, so that's something that.
I mean, that's what
Carl's
it
study
says,
is taking
so-
a deeper dive in that.
Okay, that's your presentation?
Well, it's
So-
not just that, but it's from there, there's six
And then it
segments.
looks,
Okay.
this study's going from
Okay,
there
well,
all the way
I'll,
up
we
to-
can,
So,
I
But
just
your
wanted to
thoughts
make
on
sure
that
that
would be
I
great
had
to hear,
picked that
'cause-
up. Okay.
because that's something that our study isn't kind of weighing in a final way, knowing that this other study was
Okay,
coming.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll wait to
Good.
see what you have to say.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Other comments or questions from the board? Zoe? Okay, Darren.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I'll just say to start that I'm a huge proponent of anything that calms traffic. You kind of have to physically force people to drive the way that they should be driving, because clearly relying on people to follow the speed limit, et cetera, isn't working. So thank you for all that work. And I was just curious how a decision will be made vis-a-vis the bike lanes and whether or not to have them on, well, which side of parked cars to have them on. Like, how will that decision be made? Because I know that there's some question about which one you would do.
So, well, that's something that can probably, on Sabata Street in particular, that section where is that what, by bike lanes and parking?
I think I hear a question about process.
Oh, process.
Yeah, because there were a couple, I think it's actually just one slide after this one. You showed a couple of different options, and the bottom one,
Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back.
like there, you show buffers on all of the bike lanes, but for instance, the Canal Street, like study or demonstration area, the parking was actually between the road surface for cars and the surface for bikes. And you had mentioned at some point in your presentation that that's one way you can do it, but there's like a question about whether or not to do that where you have bike lanes. So I'm just wondering, how will you make a decision, or how will a decision be made as to where to put the bike lanes vis-a-vis the parking lanes?
So that's a great question. There is a lot that goes into that. So, and honestly, in these, it could go either way. We didn't get a strong read. So one of the reasons.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I'm sorry, just an update on it. I think inherently in there, and I know Zoe for longer than you have, I think part of what she's asking is also a staff question, which is you will be making a recommendation, and your recommendation might say parking should be on the exterior of the bike service or on the interior of the service, and however you might reach that recommendation hopefully is great. I think the question is, how will a decision be made? That's at least part of it.
Which is a city.
That is part of my question. I also have an opinion on this, but
Yeah.
I don't, depending on how the process works,
Yeah.
whether my opinion makes a difference is also a question.
So like the factors that go in are any place where you'd have a lot of driveways, you'd want to have the parking along the curb, because the parking can hide a bike traveling from somebody turning into a driveway, let's say. So that's one thing that comes into it. The other thing is maintenance. If it's really tight and you have a bike lane and not much room between the parked cars, it's hard for the city to remove snow and maintain it. So, and then think about how important it is for the bicycle comfort. If it's, the parked cars do provide protection. So if it's a higher speed corridor and more traffic, you might want to err more to putting the bikes on the curb and parking in the middle.
Those
So
being some of the significant
those are all
differences
kind of
for
considerations.
Sabatis.
Lisbon Street, with it being one lane, it should have pretty low speeds.
Thanks.
But we're
I'm-
kind of in a place you could go.
I'm just
either
going to
way.
extend that question to Jeff behind you and also to John, which is, we understand the factors and how the consultants might be making a recommendation on where those are, but how ultimately will the decision be made about where to place bike service in each of these corridors? Feel free to grab a mic. Can you pass it to him so he doesn't have to get back up again?
So this portable one?
That's the one with, yes, that probably should get you pretty far.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's got like it's got a coil.
2 inches.
So I'll just say on, because this was proposed for Ash and Pine, where DOT is currently paving. So we did bring it up to them as far as restriping. I think that was one of Lucy's suggestions on that one too, was to move the parking towards the travel lane. Their main concern was not having a buffer where people are parking on both sides. They were concerned that if somebody opened their door, the car wouldn't have enough room to go around with parking on the other side. So I think if we could maintain some sort of a little bit more buffer between the travel lane and the parking, that would be a much more possible solution. There's also a lot of side streets on Ash and Pine where visibility is a concern. So all of these streets would be in conjunction with DOT. We'd have to get DOT to sign off on those changes. I'm not sure if we would need to get to the council level, but engineering and public works would definitely provide their recommendation. And admin, Brian, et cetera, would have a say too.
Would the Complete Streets Committee be reviewing and weighing in on a recommendation, even if it's just to you and Public Works, based on the recommendations from?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to take this opportunity to share a little bit about what you hope they would consider as they make that decision?
Well, it sounds like first off, there are more considerations than I had been aware of. I don't do a lot of bicycling, partially because there isn't infrastructure for it. But I do happen to know someone who lived in San Francisco who was a bike commuter who died when she swerved to avoid someone opening their car door and was immediately hit by a box truck. So that's what informs my opinion about being in favor of having the parked lane in between the car travel lane and the bike travel lane. But the point is well taken about if there are a lot of like driveways and so on, that if it reduces visibility to do that, then that ends up working to counter purposes to keeping bicyclists safe. So, but that's just.
For your example, I mean,
Yeah.
the lower one has a buffered bike. You can see the 3-foot buffer.
Yeah, so there's space for a door to be opened there, but not a physical protection, so, yeah. But, no, thanks for explaining the different factors that go into it.
Thanks for sticking around, hobbling back and forth for us. Darren?
Oh, yeah. Clarifying question, I think, for you, Lucy. So on downtown Lisbon Street, you mentioned that so there's currently turning lanes and no like single drive-through lane. You use different terms. And your proposal would be to make it so that those turning lanes didn't shift. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, let me, so it would basically be, you take the turn from all one lanes through, or turning traffic is from the same lane. It would
From the
go
same
right
way?
through.
Oh, from the
Yeah,
turn lane.
because you don't need to have, if you had a really high volume of right turns, for example, you might want to have a separate lane, but the volumes are not in any way.
I sort of
Hazard.
misunderstood before.
So-
That helps clarify things. I always assumed that those turning lanes were intended to slow down traffic, because
Yeah.
it makes me confused driving there.
I
and
know
I've-
confusion slowing down people is not the goal.
Maybe. And then on the Canal Street Promenade demonstrations, do you have or since then, do you have any data on like how much use or there has been for like
Pedestrian use?
or bicycle use there?
There wasn't any data collected because it was we had cars and speed data.
Yeah.
But Brad, you didn't collect any data on, or maybe you did. Did you have-
I believe there would have been some turning data that contained bike and head counts in it. I'm not sure if that was before or after.
So because we don't have a microphone, there's some data that might be available, but it was at a different date, in summary?
And my recollection is it may not have shown a huge increase. I mean, there's definitely interest. But until it's a bigger, it goes further and it's more connected, we don't necessarily expect a big response.
I think we have paint and bollards this year, but we're missing some of the furniture so we're not using it we're using it for through space, but we're not using it as a public space to rest or to pause on your walk or to enjoy the views of the future views of the canals. So I think that might also be contributing to how people are using it.
It's pretty empty right now.
Other questions or comments from the board? I have one, which is just a consideration, I think, as you make your recommendations and a key stakeholder to engage with so that we don't get caught later with a surprise, is the placement of the Walmart distribution center and the use of trailer trucks. Most of their traffic, and there's been a lot of design work to get them to the interstate at exit 80, but some of those trucks are servicing the Walmart in Auburn. And so I'm not sure that whether they're using Lincoln Street and coming down, kind of around and downriver to Lincoln, or if they're somehow managing to go Alford, Plord to Russell, the kind of back way directly to the Walmart. But that treatment for the Lincoln Main Street intersection could be great for cars and pedestrians and get mangled by 18-wheelers. And we've done a lot of design work in this city that has been intentional about a very high tax-paying customer in our properties and how they use the road. And I would hate to make this investment, and an 18-wheeler coming through is a really different impact for a pedestrian than a Corolla. Just sights and sight lines. And so just to be mindful of that. And I think that there's previous history that they're a stakeholder who's happy to be engaged and might offer some insights about how they use it. And they have incredible data on their own fleet and use, so they could actually probably provide you with some information. So I'd strongly encourage that. Right. We promised a public comment period on the next agenda item, but that is so much, I don't want anyone to have to hold it. And so I'm going to open it up. Do I have to? Anyway, it's not a public hearing. You get 3 minutes, ma'am. Please state your name and, comment.
Elizabeth Eames, I live right here, and I mean literally like right here. And I do want to mention that probably twice a month that I see, and it probably happens more often than that, an 18-wheeler gets stuck between Ash Street turning onto Lisbon. I don't know why some GPSs are sending them to that corner, but it's a terrible corner for them. They get stuck, it's terrible back and forth. The whole neighborhood gets in a kerfuffle about it every time. And so there was a picture of some truck slips or something, those pink triangles that you had in one of those diagrams, and I thought they should put, if they're going to work on, they're currently working on Ash and Lisbon right now. They're tearing it up. They should, when they put it back together soon, they should include that improvement in it. That's one thing. They just tore out and replaced the traffic light right there, but you just said you're going to hopefully get rid of all the traffic lights, so that's too bad. That's right-hand, left-hand problems. And the other thing is on the corner of Sabattis and Main, the school department just bought that building, 287 Main. 287 Main. Yeah. So if you're designing the intersection, redesigning that intersection, I don't know if you built into it that future use by the school. No. Yeah, so you should think about that. Yeah. Those are the 3 things I had for this.
Thank you.
I thought this was a public forum. I didn't expect to be the only person here.
Well, we could see if either of these other 2 folks wanted to add anything, but I think one's with the consulting company and one's with the TV station. Do you want to weigh in at all? Okay, great. Just checking. I think I heard that the removal of the final 3 signals and not all signals might make sense, and that it would be for a 3-way stop.
Yeah.
All stop.
All-way stop, yeah.
I'd love to see that personally.
Just literally this week.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, just for your own, and we've got a later agenda item about interdepartment communications, but I would strongly encourage you to say out loud, somebody should check with the school department about the future use of admin versus students.
Yeah, it's not clear, but it's...
And the needs would be, I imagine, very different, particularly from a pedestrian use, and so.
It's for it to be special needs students. But we don't know.
That is an exciting update right here, stuck into a transportation study. Okay, anything else? Did staff have any questions? You guys you got plenty of opportunity. That's fantastic. Lucy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I don't know that you're gonna leave Carl or not, but our gratitude
Stay
to
and
you.
take notes and let me,
Yeah, we're taking notes for each other.
Okay. I'm tempted for us all to take a quick bio break. I appreciate Darren's reminder that we might need one soon. Can we take a minute while you queue up the other presentation? Our apologies to people waiting, but we'll just take a 5-minute recess.
Sure. Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. No, that's fine. I'm fine.
Do you have a survey up now?
That's it, it's live.
Good.
I don't know how many people,
Yeah.
not a lot. It's up on ATRC's website.
Okay, we're going to adjourn our recess and jump back into other business. Item 5C. This is a presentation and public forum on the Outer Lisbon Street Safety and Mobility Plan by ATRC and Tool Design. We've already had Carl introduce himself earlier, as his colleague Lucy started her presentation, and so take it away, Carl.
Thank you, Shanna. Again, yes, Carl Epic with Tool Design. So picking up where Lisbon Street ends with the section that Lucy spoke about, which is roughly at Adams Street. We're looking at the corridor. It's a little bit over 2.5 miles long. It's 4 to 5 lanes in width, and that's just the through lanes in most points. Then we have a lot of turn lanes that gain access to the side streets, some of them signalized, many of them unsignalized. We're going to be talking mostly about the signalized intersections. We're going to be talking about access management throughout the corridor. It does extend out to Alfred A. Plord Parkway. It goes 1 through 6, these segments we're going to talk about, and actually links up at Westminster at that intersection way out where the old rail corridor crosses. That was extended. Lewiston staff suggested that we look at that because that corridor is being considered for a rail trail. So without further ado, just a jump into it. There's a survey that's active right now on ATR's website. It's been put out on Lewiston's Facebook page. But high level, just what the purpose of this study is really to look at the existing transportation capacity, which is a lot, and to identify and recommend safety improvements for all users who use the corridor. It was included in the safety action plan. There are 2 or 3 high impact areas that are really significant for crashes for both automobiles, vehicles, freight, and mostly pedestrians, because there's not a lot of cyclists here. We've been charged with maintaining acceptable levels of service, which Lucy's gotten into extensively. Now everybody knows a little bit about how that works, the A, B, C, D, E, F system, and ultimately supporting local economic activity, whether or not that's freight and the major freight providers and also the more small retail and smaller businesses that use the corridor as well. So there's a lot to balance here, and that's what we're attempting to do with these concepts. And I just want to emphasize that these are draft concepts, and the way we'll go through them when we get into them is there's 2 alternatives, and there's a short term and there's a long term, which we call quick build and full build. But first we'll just cover kind of what we've been looking at, safety. We're going to talk a little bit about crashes. Speeding, I highlighted in yellow because everybody is aware of the speeding challenges that we have here and everywhere. There's a lot of gaps in crosswalks, the importance of its connection between the downtown and the interstate, therefore its regional role. A lot of traffic goes through here to go north, south, east, and west. I already touched on freight. I already touched on the lower branch road rail as a multi-use trail potential. We won't get into that a lot, but it's something that looms because it's parallel, and as you'll see, we're going to be talking about a couple of different options within the existing right-of-way that are related to walking, biking, and really changing the lane configurations. Pedestrian bicycle crash overview. We looked at 10 years of data. We created these cluster maps where there's been pedestrian fatal crashes or severe injuries. This is also in the plan, the safety action plan that was done for the region. We're looking at some key streets. Cedar Street, which is where, again, the study that Lucy worked on really ends and begins for our study, and Adams, that's really the first 2 segments near the downtown, and South Ave, which is more in the middle. A lot of crashes out that way, and that is really the only way to cross this portion of Lisbon Street north-south. There's really no other way to get across here between, let's just say, the river and the neighborhoods to the north. A lot about the regional role, we have to keep that in mind, and freight mobility, as I've already mentioned. We already touched on these, a lot of locations where there's crashes. They also correlate with access management and where there's a lot of curb cuts. There's a high density of curb cuts. It's kind of the Wild West. That means people don't know, you don't know where somebody's going to turn to go into a parcel or where someone's going to come out of a parcel without some improvements of access management. And although this study doesn't go in depth into parcel by parcel access management, it it will touch on the need for it broadly, and, you know, when a full-blown project develops, how to approach that access management.
Sorry, are those red numbers the number of curb cuts in that area?
The red dots.
Nope, the numbers that
Oh,
correspond.
so thank you, yeah. Those are the clusters, and we've identified clustered areas where there's a lot of the high crash intersections and where there's incidents along those segments. See the red line, high crash segments, and that's the number of crashes over the 10-year period within just that segment. So, you know, as you get through south on the corridor, you've got that cluster of 29 around South Ave, and then as you get closer to the neighborhood on the hill before you go down, 64s near Olive Ave, I think that's, you know, we can get into ideas of why this happens, but, you know, you've got acceleration going up that hill, coming off of the parkway or coming off of the interstate, and then there's suddenly some signals, and there's a lot of access management issues. So you get where you get that 39 and that 64.
Thank you.
It's important to note that public transit exists on the corridor and could be, you know, if it was fortified on this corridor, could really enable, it's a corridor that's ripe for strong transit because of the number of commercial, residential, mixed use along the whole corridor. We're going to talk a little bit about bus stops, configuration of bus stops, and how that plays out with a redesign. They're generally located at key intersections, but sometimes they're nowhere near a crosswalk, so it makes it, you know, if you wanted to have correlating bus stops on both sides, you know, if you end up on the wrong side of the street, you have to play Frogger with, you know, 5-6 lanes of ongoing traffic. And I mean, it's some people I'm sure have done it, and it's one of the barriers to people using transit more seriously. And of course, I've included the railroad that's parallel. Truck volumes, I'm just highlighting the areas where there's the most truck activity, which are kind of in three logical places. One, close to the downtown. There's a lot of freight operations right near here at the northern end. In the middle, where the Lewiston Mall area is, and you know, there's the huge retail facility there, and then out by Alfred A. Plord, which is where the trucks come and go to and from the interstate. I put a bunch on here. VMT, I'm not sure if we talked too much about that. Vehicle miles traveled, just a metric of roadway usage captured by how these trucks move, how much they move. And this was just a way to, it's a data that was available and where we were able to isolate areas where there's obviously trucks along the whole corridor, but these three segments are where they're found most frequently. Also important to talk about the overall traffic on the corridor. And really what I want to point out here is that it's, even though we have to put in growth factors, which using ATRC and DOT data is around 0.4% on an annual increase, looking over, you know, this is a past decade, a snapshot of 3-4 years. It's been relatively flat. If we extended that forward into the 2020s, it decreased actually during COVID, and now it's kind of risen, but it's generally the trend is flat. Yes, go ahead.
You might want to add some consideration that the Sheriff's Department has just purchased what used to be WCBB, their plant on the corner of Westminster and Lisbon. So the sheriff's going to be coming in and out?
Not trucks, though, but...
Not trucks,
yeah.
but the sheriff's cars and...
Absolutely.
You know, emergency vehicles.
Good to know, thank you.
So you're saying that that's a decade old, but it doesn't look different if it was updated?
Yeah, it is a decade old now. That's, the trend has been relatively flat over time. There hasn't been, Lucy, is there anything more I could speak to on that? You know, you have to look corridor by corridor, but generally that's been the recent trend.
I mean, I think that's been a typical trend, even though it's not that there's not growth in the area, but
We've had 6% population growth in the larger metropolitan areas since 2021, so it might be worth seeing if you have more occurring.
Yep, thank you.
and then just travel patterns changed so much after COVID that we're still kind of
Yeah.
finding our way, and there is less commuting, more off-peak traffic, things like that are.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I will add that in, we'll to update it and see, just a comparison.
Just
Yeah,
a-
it's worth taking another
And I
snapshot.
mentioned it now because I didn't want to forget it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Again, this is something we're familiar with from the last study we went over, but looking forward into the future, currently, the point here is that the corridor has really reasonable capacity, overcapacity in many areas, there's the A's and the B's, and even projecting out into the future based on that growth, assuming that there will be some growth. There's the ability to do some interventions that would slow down traffic, create not congestion, but just a slower environment for movement out there, which allows us to do a lot of different things that I'm gonna walk you through in a few minutes. So, alternative concepts, again, I've got the QR code up there if anyone wants to take a look and respond to the survey. Based on this presentation or online are a ton of data that we use to get here. Again, it's chopped up into 6 segments, and I just add this one. This was where one-way Lisbon Street married to Canal Street, as Lucy covered. So we're really looking at the outer 6 segments, and we're going to go through them one at a time. Looking at, again, 2 alternatives and a quick build and a longer-term vision. A big thing that Tool prides itself on is developing plans that are implementable, not necessarily like in one big, go for it, but something that can be done in the short run, like the demonstration project that we did here, that can be used to demonstrate how it could work and maybe test, how things could work or might not work, and how to refine that before you actually build something more permanent. Just orientation, downtown, the high school's to the north, and Lewiston Mall's there in the middle. So we'll start just high level again, that this shows where there are existing signalized intersections with the blue dots, and then the yellow crossing sign symbol where we're looking at important places to add some crosswalks. And as you can see, I should have made it before and after, but down at Castle Street, there's nothing, between St. Croix and all the way down to Pleasant Street to cross. Again, people cross there, though. I've witnessed it in the time I've been coming here and looking at it. People cross there. People do crazy things. They're going northbound and they turn left to get onto the main turnpike. I think maybe you've all seen it. So there's just things inherently going on here that that can be addressed with some of the options that we're going to be proposing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
On that slide? I see you saying where there's existing signals and where there's proposed crossings. Are there any crosswalks that exist currently outside of the intersections that are signalized?
No.
Just wanted to make sure that was
No.
understood and
Yeah,
crystal clear.
yeah.
There is no other place.
The roadway as it's configured, you can't really do it.
It's a highway.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
You can do them, but
It's a safety concern.
it's absolutely a safety
The
concern.
traffic's going way too fast to have.
And it's, in some places, it's 82 feet.
Yeah.
It's just far too wide. You have to
Way
have
too-
signal.
yeah.
You have to have signal control.
Absolutely.
I don't know if there's a minimum, Lucy, I don't know, what, for unsignalized crossing, but it's generally far too wide along most of the corridor.
Yeah.
Just again, I brought this in here because we're going to talk a little bit about buses. Again, this is the transit network. This slide was earlier. And so this is more to give an idea of an approach to bus stop management. So without moving bus stops, leaving them maintained at their existing locations, we look at different way to configure buses. Boarding platforms, boarding platform would just be slightly raised, and inline in some of these concepts where they're protected, both the bike lane, the bike path, the two-way bike path, and one of the options, and also for the cars that are whizzing by. So it's a very much an urban design, and something to consider, and that can be included or could be changed. But this is what a direction we wanted to talk about and that we would be recommending. There's going to beg questions about, how do you get around a bus? Well, ideally, they stop very shortly, and you're stuck behind the bus until it moves. There are some ways to do it with having it move out slightly to maintain enough space. There'll still be 14-foot through lane, but just all something to be discussed. It's not built into the design completely, but it's something that our engineers want you to seriously think about and recommending as far as consideration. So, segment 1, we'll start back up near the downtown, again between Cedar Street and Adams. This is generally the existing condition. The cross-section, it varies. It has parallel parking. It's 2 lanes in each way, coupled with Canal Street. Okay, so this is the first one, so I'm going to have to carry you through it because there's a lot going on here. The typical existing conditions is in the upper left, where you've got a 10-foot sidewalk, 7-foot parking, 13-foot travel lane, 2 of them in one direction, 8-foot planted buffer, and a 5-foot sidewalk. And so that is, Lisbon Street, Adams Ave to Cedar Street. And we're going to talk a little about how this works also with Canal Street that's parallel. In this case, and this is the only segment of the 6, we're proposing a curbside bike facility, which means it's not a separate path from the curb. It's actually, the bicycle facility is one way up against the curb. In the quick build configuration, which is the next one down, it shows that you're able to eliminate, instead of going from 2 through travel lanes to a single, which allows you to add a 6-foot bike lane, a separated bike lane. And in this case, quick build, again, this is meant to be quick, not changing a lot of geometry or curbs, a 7-foot wide painted buffer, which is that hatching in the middle. In the full build, if the quick build worked, then you would go to something with more permanent, which shows at the bottom left, still 1 single travel lane, a concrete buffer, which would allow you, if it's 5 feet or wider, to put lighting in. And that's something that's come up before. There's a lack of lighting for traveling, especially if you're walking or biking at night. Another safety component to the design. So that would be segment 1, Adams to Cedar, and with a proposed curbside bike facility. The other segments are going to have 2, a curbside bike facility and a 2-way path. Everybody with me so far? This is one of the easier ones because there's one option with a short-term quick build that can be used to demo the design, and then a more thought-out, once tested, longer. The right-of-way here is very narrow. It's only 56 feet. And this is paired, again, with Canal Street that I already jumped through. Let me see. Yep, I just wanted to make sure I covered it. The one thing to mention here is that we don't have the drawing in here, but you can see in that middle concept that Canal Street still has a 2-way facility coming from the other study, and we've drawn there how that would, at this point, it would split, or it would join to the 2-way, as we come up in segment 2 here, a 2-way path on just the north side. So it's a little bit tricky here on how to accommodate a path that's coming down Canal Street to either splitting 1 way in each way, or to move that 2-way path over to the north side. And it'll be a little bit clearer when we get to these next ones. Segment 2 is, again, Adams Ave to Androscoggin. This is the hill. It gets narrow through here. It's only 4 lanes with no on-street parking, and there's no center turn lane. Again, typical cross-section. It's a multi-lane. It's approximately 63 feet wide. I think for purposes of measures, 12 to 13-foot travel lanes. We've shown here the 6-foot and 5-foot sidewalks. They vary. That's the point. The proposed would be to turn it into 2, a travel lane in each direction, some significant buffering for either proposed quick build here of the curbside bike lane. You got bike lanes concurrent with traffic in each direction, we're not changing curbs, we're not widening sidewalks under this scenario. And at the bottom, a full build, if the quick build worked, would allow you to have potentially a buffer between the bike lanes. Again, concurrent, they move with traffic. And you could play with this a little bit and do a little bit of widening of the sidewalks, but we've left them generally at 5 to 6 feet here. So again, the middle one's quick build. If that works, you go to a full build, and this is curbside. This is the curbside bike facility. Compare that with a two-way path, and this is where it gets very different, but there's space out there to do this, and it would be a really amazing facility and solves a lot of problems as far as speeding, access management. Again, the same typical existing cross-section at the top. The proposed quick build would put, we've drawn it a two-way bike path on the north side. You've got the hatching you can see there to cover where the existing pavement. And then at the bottom, a full build would allow you to put perhaps a planted buffer over sections of it. You still need to, you'd have to have basically a U-turn in certain places, the ability to turn around, because when you put a buffer down the middle, it really manages access management, limits it. But there's ways to design it so that access can still be fulfilled. It's just not at every single possible opportunity like it is out there now. No questions on that one at this point? Okay. Segment 3, this is the kind of the heaviest commercial use section. This is between Androscoggin Ave and Rosedale Street. There's a bunch of signals here. There's existing crosswalks at the signals. And, well, we'll just get into it. It's typical cross-section, what it looks like. We began to kind of look at some of the issues here, the open, really big open curb cuts. The crosswalks are there, but they're a little bit offset. The distance is, 5-6 lanes. We wondering, what can we do to use the signals to improve things? Is there any opportunity to reduce the total amount of turn lanes or the lengths, et cetera? We know that there's a new future residential development going up on the corner with East Ave. Again, lots of access management issues here. We also know that from the legacy Lewiston plan that this area has been planned for the Lisbon Street suburban retrofit concept, which is from the 2013 plan. And just pulled this in for everyone's considerations, and maybe needs to be a refresher that this was the concept for this area on the 2013 plan. And these designs for the roadway are the kind of designs that would enable this kind of development here. Mixed use, residential, commercial, really an extension of the fabric of the downtown, and really introduce, like, you've come to a different place when you're coming up Lisbon Street. These are where the signals are, so this is a place where people are used to stopping, and now it's just a matter of narrowing it up, making it a little bit more pedestrian friendly, and making it a little bit more like an urban setting. So this is the curbside bike facility. Again, existing conditions, it's about 72 feet, although it varies. You get a large center turn lane, 13-foot center turn lane, two-way. You've got 11-foot lanes, 2 in each direction, and fairly narrow sidewalks considering the potential context here, 7-8 feet, wider than in other places, but still pretty narrow. Quick build, next one, the first one down, would, in the short run, require, for the curbside bike option, pretty wide painted buffer with some kind of a vertical element that's temporary, like a Jersey barrier, and that 11'5". But in the full build condition, again, you could add to the sidewalk, you could do the concrete buffer, planted buffer with the lights in the middle, and still have 2 decent-sized through lanes. This is not at the intersections. We still retain generally the turning lanes at the intersections, but the queues may be shortened. There's opportunities to shorten them because there's not a lot of turning movements at every signal. Yes, Lucy had a question?
Yeah, you're proposing bike lanes on both sides. In this segment.
One in each way, yeah.
But in the segment before, there's the possibility of having both of them on one side. I think that would be counterproductive. Either do them on the whole length or do them, one on each side. Because otherwise, at the intersection of Lisbon and East, you're going to have bikers, having to cross over to get to the correct bike lane,
So-
and that could possibly
Yeah,
be
yeah, this- let me just provide clarity. Both of these options, the curbside bike facility and the two-way path, would be between Adams and Westminster. It's not chopped up like, and I knew this
So
was
it's
gonna be-
either or
Yeah,
the whole length of it.
There are two
Okay.
alternatives. I knew it was gonna be a little bit difficult to show it this way, but because we wanted to include the quick build, the short term, the demo, basically the demo version, and then a full build, And either one of them, you'd really only do one or the other, but over long, if you can imagine a long period of time, if you built up enough use with the curbside, the curbside one's a little bit easier to demo and then implement versus building a two-way path on one side. You could ultimately get there. It's just how you get there.
Right.
And if you want to get there, it's a lot of access management issues with a two-way bike path.
Yeah.
So the treatments would be consistent from end to end. They would transition again around Adams or Locust Street, back closer to the downtown where it would join the other study.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so yeah, I know it's a little,
I was a little confused.
and I just wanted to be really clear there
Okay.
as we go on. So yeah, it's one or the other, and then there's the short-term quick build and full build for each option.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. This is, this is still segment 3, but it varies. This one, existing conditions, this is where it flares, I think, out to 72. This is the proposed two-way path, excuse me,
Right.
that's what we're doing here. So now you're going to see the two-way path, which is 8-foot side, you still have sidewalks. You have the travelway in the quick build option. You've got 11 foot in each direction. You still have a fairly large hatched, 7-foot buffer there. This is the middle one as I'm moving left to right. And then you have a 10-foot wide two-way bike path, and you still have a 7-foot wide sidewalk. And then in the full build, if that were successful, you could provide all kinds of buffering, whether or not it's a planted median, a concrete median with lighting. This would be further designed for what you ultimately decide to do, probably from building off of the quick build scenario. Overall, this one reduces from 5 lanes to 3 and establishes standard lane widths, which is, I just point that out. Then we broke this out, segment 3 still, but this is atypical. This is where the right-of-way widens to 85 feet. So this is, again, where we were talking about earlier, where it's really difficult to cross today. The typical at the top, you've got 2 13-foot travel lanes, you've got 5-foot wide sidewalks, 5 to 6. You've got turning lanes, you've got, there's a lot going on here. It's very wide and really, really hostile for crossing. The quick build, in both of these, it reduces it to a single travel lane in each direction. We retain the turning lanes, the left turn and the right turn lanes, but there's still some buffering here for channelization, as we call it, the 9-foot on one side, and I think it's smaller, 7-foot on the right, keeping the two-way bike lane or the two-way path, and opportunities to widen out the sidewalks, in this case, these are 8 feet here. The full build is similar, but adds the more permanent concrete buffers. But you get, on the left, you can see there where the sidewalk goes from 5 feet out to potential 14. And so if you had that kind of development that was contemplated in the Legacy Lewiston plan in this area, this is, you can imagine it being a very busy pedestrian area, and you would need wider sidewalks. And there's just a drawing there of what the intersection may look like, a little bit more engineered than just a schematic. Okay, on to 4 and 5. This is what it typically looks like. Again, still 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane. We're looking at between Rosedale Street, South Avenue, and Castle Street. A lot of signals through here, so again, we're retaining mostly the turn lanes at these signals, but there's opportunities to shorten them or better coordinate the signals. There's some improvements happening here. The heads-up program for the crosswalks and the sidewalk crosswalks. So there's already some stuff happening here, but anyway, we'll go through what these options look like. Back down to 70-foot right away, 5 to 7 foot sidewalks, 12, 11-foot travel lanes. There's a center left turn lane here. In the quick build scenario for the curbside bike lanes, we look at a very large painted buffer again with some vertical elements, 11-foot lanes, painted buffer. Again, this is quick build. This is so we can test it in the short run. And then the full build shows here there's opportunities to do a planted median up to 8 feet, still have the 11-foot lanes going through, perhaps lighting. This is a little bit more of a neighborhoody location. It's also a place where you just come up the hill, a place to transition to the Lewiston Mall area where we're looking at that more mixed-use urban development. And then the two-way path option. Same existing conditions, continuing in the quick build to do a lot of painted medians and some hatched shoulders, perhaps a Jersey barrier, but we're still providing the two-way bike lane, the two-way path on one side, on the north side, and then the full build, again, potential to do planted medians, concrete buffer, perhaps wider sidewalks. Sorry for the scrambling of all the text. When you upload it to the cloud, it has some way of messing it up. But I can get you all the narratives here. And last but not least, segment 6. So there's an interesting treatment here. There's a gateway treatment here. As you can see, we've got a pedestrian sign there to indicate a new unsignalized crosswalk. It also is important in the configuration with the two-way path because you have to be able to get over to the park and ride. So we'll just get right into it. There's the concepts here of how this has been done in other places, New York City DOT, between the full build out of what this would look like. But in the big map at the bottom there, again, we need to get everybody into a safe situation. So there's a lot of changes to what's in the pavement. Would naturally slow you down. Today, people accelerate here. Remember, there's a bunch of crashes going up the hill. Crosswalks here, transition potentially from curbside bike lanes to two-way path at Olive that would get you over, again, to the park and ride. Quick build would be a lot more paint, and then the long-term full build, potentially, vertical medians, better lighting, maybe something overhead that really kind of denotes, expect people to be crossing here, even though there's not a signal. So it really needs to be designed to slow people down and get them to go the speed limit. Maybe some rectangular rapid flashing beacons could be installed here. You guys are probably familiar with those. I'm sure there's some around the city. The big one here is the access to the on-ramp to get up to Alfred A. Plord, which is, here it's just shown as, that'd probably be grass, but exactly how you would transition over to it. Today it's just kind of like a slingshot, would need further design. But the idea is that this is an area to go through more slowly. It's been contemplated that maybe a roundabout with the ramp is something that could be considered. We haven't designed that, but that this is an important gateway location to really get people to be going 35 or the real speed limit that's out there. This is also the most constrained area. Once you get close to the parkway, it gets down to 40 feet. And I say constrained just because we're looking only at curb to curb, but because so much of this area is off ramps, we suspect that a lot of it is public right of way. But for the purposes of this study, we've looked at where it gets really constrained. It's down to 40 feet. There's already some shoulders out there, sidewalks, excuse me. Quick build, you can do bike lanes. A lot of measuring, really have to pay particular attention to exactly what the widths are. You could minimize the shoulders and just put in bike lanes, 8-foot sidewalk in the quick build. That's not messing with the curbs. And then in the full build, really you need a shared side path, which is what's showed at the bottom right, a 12-foot shared side path, which would most likely, again, be on the north side to get you through underneath the parkway. This is just showing some more of the details and considerations. As I mentioned, the RFB around Olive Avenue, the transition between side path and curbside protected bike lanes, because once you get further out here, you're probably going to transition as you go further out Lisbon Street towards Lisbon to actual bike lanes past Westminster. The bottom big panel, we looked closely at Pleasant Street, and this 45-degree angle, and there's a giant slip lane there. We tested that with the software, and a large semi-truck is already driving over the median. There's a pole in the middle of that pork chop wedge there. A lot of problems here, and it would be fairly easy to eliminate that slip lane. We think that most of the trucks are not doing that movement because they can do that right turn onto Alfred A. Plord instead of coming down here. But that would require some signage and some logistics management with anybody doing freight through here. It sounds like that's already going on because it's apparently not a problem. So we're curious why that slip lane is still there. And that is has a large crossing. You can see the other one on the right of the main street of Pleasant Street. No easy way to get that right without. We looked at doing shifting Pleasant Street to coming in at a 90-degree angle. Very complicated to resolve. But there's some concepts that we looked at. So that's again where we're at, and again the survey's up. Love to hear any questions, concerns, what you like, what you don't like.
Can you offer, before we dive into that, can you offer any kind of process next steps? So you'll hear from us today, and then what are some of the steps that will come next?
Well, we're going to model this in the traffic software, just to get those letters, get an understanding of, ultimately a direction with, don't go towards the two-way path, or we think on-street bike lanes are the answer that are concurrent with the direction, or keep exploring these things, curious about how it affects level of service. Give us some metrics on, idea about safety. We want to be able to churn out that information about how this performs. We have a matrix of performance. We're going to be weighing these against some performance goals. And scoring each of them to see.
You'll take our input and make a recommendation.
Yeah.
And then once you've placed that recommendation, do you know, and this might be a Jeff question again, is there more public input planned on final recommendations? And is there a lot of state cooperation in actually realizing and implementing some of this? And is there a time frame you're aiming for any of those milestones?
Definitely more with ATRC and the state. As far as, we need more data about how these work now that they're somewhat designed. And generally, this would fall into the road diet category. If this is an area where, what degree of road diet and is acceptable. And let's see, what else?
So I think one option would be the next time Maine DOT resurfaces it, this could be done, but the city may want to do something sooner.
So it is a Jeff question.
So
Sorry, Jeff.
Well, it's Brad's project.
Yeah. I mean,
Pass the buck.
and if Brad wants to find a microphone to answer that question, I would welcome Brad to do so. I mean, I think I just want to be really candid as somebody who's been here for 18 plus years and engaging the public. Your study is a study that we've had a lot of deaths on. your study is an area that has had, as you noted, a lot of injuries and property, right?
Oh, yeah, it's in the
And
news.
so I think there is an excitement and a necessity of seeing some elements of this realized. And as a body that regularly sees our capital improvement plan, we know that we're like just trying to take care of sidewalks and streets in all of the parts of the city. So, is this a really pretty plan that maybe gets funded when DOT feels like it, and that's what we can anticipate? Or is this something that it creates real opportunity for how we as a planning board and how the city is planning the allocation of resources and further engagement of our community? Like, I guess I would just love to know, like, then what? These lovely folks hand over some great designs. Data's been finalized. We get to do what with it? And you've already named a couple things on the horizon. So can somebody hand him the microphone so he doesn't have to get up? Thanks so much.
I know, it doesn't really.
Lucy's mine. Lucy, yeah, yeah. You're great. You're good.
So yeah, it definitely comes down to funding, and for me, I'd like to see some prioritization of how we can bite off a portion, and not try to tackle the whole corridor at once, and start with a section and see how it works, because that would be a lot easier to get funded sooner than later. If we wait for funding for the whole thing, it'll take forever. So I'd like to see some recommendations on how to phase it and prioritize which sections we'd like to see done first, which probably does come down to where the most accidents are. Where are we going to get the most bang for our buck? But we don't want to do a piece in the middle either, because then.
Well, I worry about, I really appreciate prioritization, and I really also appreciate that you're looking at it through the lens of safety. I can, Lucy's comments around transitioning from two-way on one side to one-way on each side, can you imagine? If we,
It's not.
the Auburn Park Street School, when there was really great sidewalks that went to the school and ended from the school to the main course of the road, right? And like, it was very much we did this in pieces. And so it's not just like, what are the priorities, but how those priorities will connect with each other, and how, if we do quick builds throughout and then prioritize the full builds. I'd think of Westbrook's route, I think it's Route 25, the arterial, that was like through the downtown, and, was just like so big and so impossible and had a lot of these same treatment. And now you go through there and it's really the managed access points and the managed speed. And I don't know what it looked like to get that funded and how long that took. I'm sure it was forever, but I do worry about even just getting bicyclists. I had family come in from out of town. They were excited to be in a city that was like walkable, which I snickered at. I lived on Bartlett Street at the time, and they were trying to make their way to the Dollar Tree, I think, and McDonald's. And they looked at a map and they're like, oh, this is so close. And it was my mother with like my siblings who were, 4 and 8 at the time. And they asked for a ride to get back because it was so terrifying. And so if you get somebody on a bike or somebody with a stroller thinking, well, I can make it this stretch, or I saw this treatment as I came in through the gateway, and it goes nowhere, I think that could be really alarming too. And so I think, to your point, I get why it's almost impossible to do it all at once, particularly in the ideal format. Not only how do we prioritize it, but what does it look like to transition from guarded, safe bike lines and really nice crosswalks to nothing for the entire latter 1.5 miles? Or so, Jeff, just lay a little cover for you. And I think there's some, like, where are we in county and state funding and priorities, or where might we be looking at already doing some work that we don't miss opportunities, which we've been good at, but that feels like an important piece for us to give whatever information we have that would weigh into it. I don't know that someone else won't have another question for you, but that looks uncomfortable, and thank you. I appreciate it greatly.
This corridor, again, it was, in thinking about it, we're like, well, how do we, because it's so long, and how do you how do you create a plan that people can get, do it in pieces and see, oh, okay, I see the big overall vision. How the heck do we get there? Personally, when I've looked at this, it's probably most logical to start at segment 1, work from the downtown out, at least from Cedar Street to, Androscoggin, Lewiston Mall. I mean, even that, though, is still big, but it's probably that could be done. And now that you all have experience with a demonstration project on Canal Street, that could easily be another demonstration project, perhaps after a paving, DOT paving. I don't know how I know enough to know that they say, we're going to pave this segment. Is that its own segment, Jeff? It's always, there's a break somewhere, and they do from here to here every time. So would need to look at that. It's worth taking a look at where the paving projects are, and maybe try and phase it around what the paving segments are. But sometimes, there's no relation to.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's just where they said it made sense to somebody, but not for the reasons that are necessarily consistent with what we're trying to achieve. So we'll look at that.
If I had to make a recommendation, I mean, I realize this is like a center segment, but the East Avenue, Lisbon Street intersection is bad. We've already had multiple people were killed, and we're going to get it's going to get worse because they're building a new grocery store in the Lewiston Mall, and they're building the senior housing across the street, and you've got a Popeyes and Starbucks and a Burger King. So, I might like to go eat there, and the crossing is scary. So, that might be, because of the increase in traffic that has to be projected because of these two developments at that intersection, that, is, I think, a very high priority, at least in my book. And, just for safety, because you're going to get a lot of little old ladies and little old guys walking with canes or walkers trying to get across these streets, and somebody's going to get hurt.
And has already.
It has already, and it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
I appreciate Lucy's comments, and I've also been sitting here thinking about beyond Westminster, which isn't part of your study.
Nope.
I mean, it becomes a little racetrack, trying to get first in line, going out of the city and hustling coming into the city. So I'm curious about, even if you were acting on Lucy's recommendation, what are some other strategies that might help modify the speed of traffic that's coming off that long stretch of Lisbon Street beyond Westminster, and then the intensity of the traffic accidents where Alfred Plord is crossing, just going up that hill, that's a pretty treacherous thing. And so what the longer term sort of, I don't even know what they would be, but what those strategies would be coming into that, if that could help that, and then be able to start in a place where the East Ave is not a bad idea too. So
I don't know if you have them, but those mobile, there's a sign and they flash. If they detect, they tell you what your speed is supposed to be, and if you're going over that speed limit, I think a blue light comes on, and we all know what blue lights do to us, so they make us slow down. I live in South Portland, and you come across the Casco Bay Bridge, they've got, that bridge is designed for 60 miles an hour. You hit a traffic light, and it immediately goes to 25, 30. The police often put one of those mobile units out. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have a bunch of them or whatever, but it's relatively inexpensive in the short run, without redesigning the road. That's something that could be done in a couple places, but that's very different than what we're talking about. But there is an immediate problem there. Absolutely, I've witnessed it. people doing the turns, accelerating both directions to to go southeast and to go towards downtown. I know that works for me and a lot of people. I don't know if that's been tried, at least in the very short run, in the immediate time frame.
Other comments or questions from the board? Zoe?
One element that, or maybe a couple elements that I didn't hear you discuss were things like speed tables or raised crosswalks. I don't know if those played a role in anything that you considered at all, but didn't make it into the presentation. And I thought of that particularly because of the idea of adding crosswalks at the park and ride, where at an area where people are right now are accelerating. And if you're going to be adding pedestrian crossings, that could be an area that would really benefit from that.
Again, it's hard to imagine it out there as the way the road is today, but if those crosswalks without a signal went in at the park and ride, that would certainly be considered. Not a lot of people and nobody really likes that type of treatment. It's better to narrow down.
Plow guys love it.
Who does?
Plow guys.
Oh,
I'm kidding. They don't like that.
It's their favorite, absolute favorite. Yeah, it's not an ideal treatment in a location like this, I would say.
Don't we usually see raised speed tables in 25 mile an hour and not 35 mile an hour?
Yeah, that's I don't even know if they're. I don't know if they can even be deployed. You'd have to change the context to get the speed down. I don't think it's necessarily.
And I don't care what you put the speed limit there, they're gonna be doing 40 anyways, because they're going up the hill. I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with two, the way it is there now with two through lanes, it feels like a highway. If you did a single lane with narrowed up everything with a real gateway treatment there, and then you come to St. Croix and Martin and that area, it's a matter of changing the context, providing that message at the gateway there at the bottom of the hill, and then being consistent with design. It's really hard to do all at once, but we can look at it and figure out, maybe it's the bookends. You can start at the north end, and you can start right there.
You gotta start someplace.
And then as development happens, you can require developers to do things,
Other comments from the board? I have one or two I want to make. Okay. You don't need to go back to this slide, but there was a slide about bus stops and how that interfaced with these segments. And I am happy to sit behind a bus when it's stopping, and usually they keep going. There are a couple of locations in our city where it feels like, and I guess my question is will you please look into this and get data from the bus company, but where the stop is longer because of wheelchair use and kind of the time to mechanically amend the bus.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so even if we design it so that people are meant to stop, they're not gonna. They're going to be like, oh, there goes the, and then they're going to try to get around, and it's going to be dangerous. And so we're adding in senior housing.
I know.
And we have some senior housing that's, essentially on Oak, right down, right off of Lisbon as well. And so we've got it in a couple of locations. And frankly, hopefully we'll have more, and hopefully it'll look like that Legacy Lewiston plan. And so what does it look like to either create a space that maybe doesn't require, the ramp is built in when you talked about the raised bus stops, so that they don't have to slow down, and look at the bus end solution and not just, it would be helpful for you to find data of how often the bus companies are actually seeing that. I think parents and strollers are a little quicker to get, they don't require all of the same mechanisms on the bus, but I think that's going to be an important design element. And then the other piece is we're happily a tree city, USA, and I love the amount of trees that we have in our community. It cools areas. There's good information about it keeping heat down, and and we've got them, and they're beautiful in all of our corridors except this one. And in all of your graphics, we didn't see any trees introduced until maybe the median in the full build. And I'm just wondering, and this is as you design this and make your recommendations, what is consistent enough between the quick build and the full build that street trees can be used as a solution without it having to be like undone to move from the quick to the full? So if there's one side that can get trees as we're
Yeah.
going, or trees and planters that can be moved.
I was just going to say, a plant in a quick build configuration, you could do, there'd be smaller trees and large planters.
Trees just immediately say visually it's here instead of where the buildings are, and no amount of paint
Yeah.
closes that visual scape
Yeah,
as quickly.
I mean, down by the Park and Ride, Castle Street, that would be, the quick build could include that.
Yeah.
Absolutely a great gateway
Just-
treatment.
And we've got a great arborist and we've got a great street
Okay.
tree program. And so just being intentional in like what the phases could look like, or where street trees that are permanent could be included in the quick build,
Yeah, I
I
think,
think would be something that our city would be.
that's great to hear, because,
Yeah.
yeah, we can definitely include that.
Yes. Shout out to Steve Murch. Kills it. I'm going to open it up for public comment, which I don't need a gavel. So please, ma'am, find yourself the podium again. I do think you're the only one, but I welcome anybody else.
I'm the only one.
Brad.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3. Eames, E-A-M-E-S, Ward 3. It's really a question out of ignorance. When you're rebuilding the quick build and it's or the reconfiguration of streets, and it's mostly paint on the ground and it's wintertime, do we think it will work? Is it safe? It's a question I just don't know the answer to. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in every instance, there's a lot of operational learning curves of, obviously it provides a great place to store snow, which I think some people will be excited about. But it complicates things in different ways, because you need to store snow, potentially more of it, where there might be crosswalks, or if it gets too high, it might provide a sight line, it might block a sight line. So it would definitely become more of a management. There's already snow management, so it would be a new level of snow management. And just just repainting is a challenge in Maine, because it's, especially the more paint you put out there, the more costly it is, even though it's cheap, because it's a demonstration, it's a short term, it's a quick build. So all things that will need to be considered, but again, it's a path. The quick build is a path to try things before you spend 1 million versus 10 million or whatever. It's just like the demonstration project over on Canal Street. It's that kind of approach. But management plan would definitely need to be a part of it for.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Was this the only shot that these lovely folks get, or is there like a public workshop ahead, not that this shouldn't have counted, but ahead of city council meeting? Is there any other public engagement around this, or is Ms. Eames the public? And thank goodness, I suppose, right?
Madam Chair, if I may, I have a question for Carl, and this could be construed as a public comment. So I'm just curious if the study entailed any secondary or tertiary side effects, if you will, for slowing down the area of Lisbon Street down by the Alfred Plord Parkway. As you stated, the goal is to try to slow traffic down going up that hill. The immediate side effect of that is going to be people will bypass Lisbon Street, they will go over to Pleasant Street, and they will use Pleasant Street as the new Lisbon Street highway. Yeah. If they don't do that, they will go further down to Webster Street and use Webster Street as the byway to get to the downtown area. So, doing all of this is great to Lisbon Street, but what are the unintended consequences of those other residential neighborhood streets?
Are there existing speed problems?
Yes.
Already on those other streets?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whack-a-mole.
People will realize it, and they will bypass it at the entrance of Pleasant Street, and then they will just take, instead of the loop off the turnpike, go to the Clarion and head left.
Yeah, we have not looked at that.
More four-way stops on Pleasant and Webster.
Dead end it.
This
right?
Is,
Thank you.
Dead end.
Shout out.
I mean, this is, I'll reach out to you outside here to get a better understanding of what already is going on.
Pleasant Street is Bartlett Street. The reason it becomes unpleasant when it enters the tree streets is a long thorn in my side, but it is the other side of your mall plaza.
Yeah.
And so the other consideration of that, particularly, pre-2045, when we maybe aren't infilling the gray space that is parking lots around that intersection, and we've seen commercial investments, that leads me to believe that version of the legacy plan will not be realized because of the commercial investments. You might get more residential around the edges. Martell is, I think, living into that promise. But you're going to see mixed use, right? You're going to continue to see, and how great to live next to a grocery store or two. But as we see those changes, you already see people shortcutting elements of the East Ave Lisbon Street intersection by cutting through the parking lot, and that connects to Bartlett Street, which is Pleasant Street. And Pleasant Street is exactly parallel to Lisbon the entire way, and brings you out not only at the intersection that you modeled, but the Alfred Plort Parkway just before.
Sounds like we have an expanding scope situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, two
It's
stop
real.
signs in one intersection light versus all of Lisbon Street.
Yeah.
Right.
2 stop signs.
Yeah. Plus, you have to factor in on Alfred Plord Parkway behind the Clarion, and between the Clarion and the funeral home, there's going to be a fire station.
Yep. Which was ideal planning. Okay. Thank you to the public for showing up tonight. I think that was a great comment, regardless of what hat you were wearing, and so thank you for that. Anything else from the board, Mr. Marcotte?
No.
No, just kidding.
No,
Okay.
just touching.
All right. Well, that's great. With our gratitude, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. It's very informative, both presentations.
Will you send the slides as PDFs so that you don't have any text issues and send them out to us?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great. I'd love to
I'll
have
turn it
both
into
presentations.
like 2 slides per page type of thing.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that'll
Just
be.
get it to Shelley and,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Super, thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah,
Thank
nice to
you.
meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to, we have 2 more agenda items. Both of them could be longer agenda items. We need to keep moving. So, item D, discussion of the process between planning board, city staff, and council. I'd like to note that this is partly at my request and comes on the heels of a declination of moving into an executive session.
Good luck.
And so, before Director Connor goes into the contents of his memo, I'm going to preface with a couple of things. One, it was my intention to ask for an executive session so that we could speak candidly in a way that didn't disparage any individuals of staff or our city as a whole, because developers and investors do watch these meetings and do form opinions about how coordinated we are as a city, how we respect their opinions and their time, and I do not wish to further damage that. And this request does come from a meeting with City Council on the heels of a March 16th meeting that the Planning Board had, where I feel like respecting the Planning Board and making sure that process is thoughtful and that information is shared wasn't met, and the only way to address that was to do so publicly during a City Council meeting. That is not the ideal way to deal with issues, and I want to be thoughtful about how we speak about staff this evening and how we speak about City Council this evening, and the respect that we offer to those looking to invest or partner with our city, while also seeking transparency and remedy. And that is a tightrope I'm going to name, though coming down for a couple of weeks has probably brought my likeliness to use bad words down quite a bit. So, Director Connor, you have a memo for us. I would like to just name on the outset, and you create space for this when you are done, that your objective for tonight's discussion is a singular objective, and I think is a bit shy of a second objective that we had requested. And so I'm just going to go ahead and name it on the front end in case you want to address it as you go, which is that I was looking for us to reach agreement, us, staff and board, to reach agreement on how requests from the planning board to other departments or council are handled. And that is not specific to just property dispositions. Okay. Please, sir.
If you'll indulge, I'm writing all of that down real
Yeah.
quick here.
I also have it written down in case you need a refresher.
Madam Chair, thank you for eloquently stating that. What is that feedback?
Oh, welcome. That's the thing behind the wall, and it does it every meeting.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Feel it up here.
Ever since it was installed.
Yeah, you do. There's a vibration up here.
And when it stops, you take a deep sigh and realize that you
Wow.
didn't know.
I
Yeah.
thought my tinnitus was bad. That's bad. I'm not going to read through the entire memo. I trust everybody has read it. Those are just kind of the topics that we'd like to discuss tonight. It included, what you would like to add tonight. For me, tonight's goal is to turn recent frustrations into a permanent process fix. To keep this productive and legally sound, we need to focus strictly on processes, protocols, and workflows, as you've already stated, not individual personalities or personnel. My goal as your director is to ensure that you have land use context you need to do your jobs effectively while ensuring our process stays aligned with council's legislative authority and state executive session laws. We're pretty much opening up tonight to get all of your comments to us so that we can take that and kind of figure out what's the best way going forward. What is it that you need from other departments? What is it that you need from us? What is it that you need from the council in order to make a better decision with not just property disposition, but all of the recommendations that you are charged with making to the council? So, I've got some suggestions, but again, that's coming from my perspective. We would love to hear from all of you. I think my memo was pretty clear in what each role is, according to the charter, according to all of state statutes, what each body does, but that doesn't mean we can't work effectively together and try to figure out the best processes and protocols going forward. So I will say as we went back after the recent events of the vote at the council, staff went back and watched the review of the video, the planning board video, where the comment of an executive session was brought up. And I think staff, and Shelley can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the end of that meeting, we didn't get the feeling that the executive session was warranted at that time. It was more of if they want us to give this recommendation, they're going to need to give us some more information. So I think we misrepresented, or we mistook the feeling or the vibe of the board by the end of the meeting, because I think the question about the executive session was made towards the beginning of the meeting, and as we kind of worked through, as you guys all kind of worked through some of it, it didn't sound like that was still a request. So we will ask that clarifying question going forward at the end of the meeting. If something comes up at the beginning, we'll make sure that we get clarification from the board at the end exactly as to, was that comment made earlier? Is that what you want us to go, the direction you want us to go, or have your questions been answered? So we did take that away from rewatching that video. But unless Shelley has something to add, again, we're here to try to figure out the best process of bridging this gap that came up in the last probably a few different dispositions and other agenda items that have come up.
Yeah, just one other thing to add. The minutes also did not reflect a request for executive session. So when the board is helping to review minutes, if you can flag that as well, if you don't think that we're accurately representing the requests.
Thanks. I'm just going to parse out of what you just named, Director Connor. For me, there's something sticky about intent versus impact, and I can appreciate that our goal tonight is to hear some concerns that lead to recommendations on workflow. What I'm concerned with, because of what I heard from staff that night and in writing in advance of that night, is that there was not a need for, and I'm not trying to drill down on whether the request was made or made in the right way or any of that. We weren't provided enough information about the disposition of the red shop. And then the city council got a lot more information than we did and a negative recommendation from us. And the rationale by multiple staff in multiple departments was essentially a disposition wasn't being requested. And what that means to staff, and I'm using that term really broadly, is I don't know what the internal process looks like, but this is intent versus impact. And the impact is that two departments worked together or didn't to represent to an investor with long-term standing in our community that our intent as a city was to dispose of it. And because this was not a technical disposition, that's fine to do. And that, at best, feels unethical. At worst, it feels dismissive to a body that invests time and consideration. And so I want to parse out that whatever workflow gets us to understanding action steps relative to an agenda item that the board considered, which has admittedly come up many times for a disposition, but there are other times when there has been an action step of a joint council workshop or the ability to understand. We did this really well with the prior council, interestingly enough, where we had joint sessions about commercial goals and commercial corridors. And that wasn't about a disposition. That was about a planning body and a decisioning body working together. And that feels really important and is not just about technicalities, but is about intention relative to our two roles. And I don't want that to get missed in the concrete answer to the question you just posed. And I really want to name that because the ethical component of that is what absolutely stopped me dead in my tracks that night. I was concerned, and if it had just been something missed, and that was what had gotten surfaced leading into the city council vote, that would be, people are human and humans make mistakes. And I get that. I don't believe that's what happened that night. I don't believe that's what happened as that agenda item was drafted internally, run through administration in multiple departments, and when it was considered more fully. And when I'm naming my concern around intent, it is that. Other members of the board, I'd love to hear from you. I certainly have other comments that I want to make sure get raised this evening, but I appreciate Director Connor's open invitation for any thoughts that might be considered into any improvements made into the interworking relationships as well as the property disposition. Lucy?
As you mentioned, Shannon, we had a really good relationship with the prior city council who initiated multiple joint meetings to discuss the corridors at the time, and we brought up other stuff, and that was great. And I think that's something that is lacking. I'm sure it's not part of the city charter or whatever, but there should be joint meetings between the city council and this board at least a couple of times a year. And so that we can discuss, how things are being looked at. I mean, this whole plan of Mr. Thompson was totally out of the blue. It's a fantastic plan, don't get me wrong, but it was totally out of the blue. It felt like it was snuck to get it around the planning board. And if we had some kind of a gathering, or at least have been forewarned about what in blazes they were going to be talking about, it would have lessened the shock that people felt, whether it's getting, selling the red shop or not. And again, in March, we weren't given any information about, and that's the problem. I understand that's part of the charter, but that's a problem. it happens all the time. And I know Mr. Marcot's a good one to bring it up. It happens all the time. We say, well, what do you gonna do? We're gonna buy this piece of land now, like we're buying the piece of land at 9 Foss. Absolutely. That sounds like a great thing. But that hasn't come before us as an acquisition, has it?
Before tonight, no?
Before tonight?
No, not before tonight.
So.
Or was it presented as an acquisition without a purpose, without addition? Like, we had 5 pages of information related to that.
This is great. I mean, if Foss came before us with this kind of information, I'm using that as an example, everybody would say, yeah, super, that sounds like a great idea. It's a heck of a lot better use of money than to rebuild this bridge that has to be rebuilt every X amount at twice the price. So this is the problem. We are asked to dispose of a valuable piece of property the little house lot that doesn't have a frontage, that's not a big deal. But it's the pieces of property that are valuable that we are asked to dispose of with no rhyme or reason presented to us. And that is very, very frustrating for us. And that's why you get denials like we did with the Red Shop, because we had no idea of what in blazes anybody had in mind, selling a valuable piece of property that's in the middle of a very valuable piece of property. So it sounds, but that's a pig in a poke. I mean, we don't want to do that. That's not good planning. And that's the problem for us.
Thank you. Mr. Marcotte?
Not sure where to begin. Several different thoughts here, but to start from something that Lucy just said, frustrating. I also find it insulting that we are asked to give recommendations on the acquisitions and dispositions of properties from an uninformed point of view or perspective. This is not the first time it's happened. None. There was a unanimous vote in opposition on the recommendation for the Red Shop. The same occurred on Martell School several years ago because we weren't given privy to the inside information. It's not unprecedented that the planning board has been in executive sessions. If you need to look back at some institutional memory, make contact with Mr. Arsenault, if he's still around, still with us. Dave Hediger, I know that he is. As a matter of fact, I remember during the Mr. Hediger years, when we were studying, Lucy will probably remember, all of the ins and outs of the riverfront. Not only is the planning board the keepers of the comp plan, but we were given a huge charge to participate in anything and everything that went on with respect to the riverfront. So I took it a little more personally a couple months ago when that just seemed to be back-ended, city council having executive sessions, and a little bit of sarcasm here, but giving away our assets that the local taxpayers, the state taxpayers, and the federal taxpayers have all contributed to. I mean, there's been land remediation down there because of soil contamination. There's been investment in an amphitheater that this board was absolutely involved in. As a matter of fact, I believe that idea germinated from this board as the result of having certain funds available to us and wondering how best to use those funds. And that was the idea that came out from many others. But to just wake up one day, and a couple days before a recommendation, simply being asked yes or no on the disposition of the Red Shop, and some of the other items within the letter of intent, which may or may not be succinctly planning board, but I find some of the financial math a little bit insulting to the entire community. I mean, we need to start respecting our community to the point where we're not giving things away, making trivial comments such as, well, the investment will bring more investment later. I had a rather heated conversation last week with an individual with respect to how if this community is going to succeed, survive first and then succeed, we really need to take care of some of our cultural problems first, because every idea that I've seen in the last 46 years of my adult life that I've been paying attention has not resulted in improvement. If anything, it has resulted in quite the opposite. Tonight, we listened to transit ideas for the city of Lewiston. I've seen plenty of them come and go in this community, particularly Lisbon Street. That caught my attention the most because that's the corridor that I live in and have for the last 64 years. And all these ideas were so great. Where's the material success from all those previous plans? We really have to consider Lewiston as a place of economic energy, not just a playground that's paid for by the poor taxpayers of Lewiston, who are now abandoning their homes, not sure if they can pay their taxes, especially with next year's reval, and so on and so forth. But so there has been a I knew I had the word here somewhere. It's not unprecedented that the planning board has been involved in executive sessions, though I can't remember the 2 or 3 explicitly. I know that one came during a short tenure of a member, Mr. Medor, so that could help triangulate on the minutes of the meeting as to what the executive session was. What I do remember about it is that we had cast a vote, prevailing vote, in opposition to something that staff and council didn't like, and we were Mr. Medor was asked to make the motion to reconsider. He did so, and it had a different result because a different attendance configuration of the board arrived at that next meeting, even though he and I believe, voted in opposition the second time around as well. And why was it an executive session? I'm sure that it had some sort of sensibility with respect to the developers, et cetera, involved in that particular item.
Mr. Marcotte, I think you have a number of good points, and I want to hear them all. And so you have established that we have done executive session before, and that we should include what that is clearly in whatever protocol gets adopted. But I want to hear what else you've got.
Yeah, and well, I wanted to circle, I know I'm throwing a lot of different things, grabbing things from different facets here, but what I've heard during all of my intermittent tenure here since 2009 is that we don't get to participate in executive sessions with the council. It's always been a struggle, even though it's not unprecedented, and there's 2 or 3 occasions where we have. But I hear more recently than even back 10 to 17 years ago that we don't get to. Just like the memo that we got a little while ago that outlined MRS Chapter 405 6C. I mean, there's many different ways to interpret some of this language, the considerations. Anyone can make an argument for and against anything that they so choose. Now, that's the feeling I get here. we're the redheaded stepchildren that don't get to deserve to participate in being informed, but we're expected to provide the recommendation because it's in the charter. It's an obstacle to the city council or to staff. Many times there's been administrations that are just as onerous as the council, maybe even more so. And I'm going back 46 years with that comment in a lot of different administrations, not just the current one. But I think I've exhausted my ability to remember all of the little shards that I wanted to throw out there.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Yeah, I like the idea of the council and the planning board having an understanding of expectations of one another, and having joint opportunities to meet for that purpose. And I wonder if there's some procedural things that, for us to serve in an advisory role, the way you define the roles of the different bodies at the beginning, for us to serve in an advisory role, for us to have some clarity on what that means and what it doesn't mean, but also procedurally, how do you advise on something, what is required to be provided to an advisory body in order to provide advice? Like procedurally, that only makes some sense. And I'm also curious about, while there's a fiduciary responsibility in the council, from a legal perspective, one would think that that confidentiality, the obligation to confidentiality, should extend to us as well, so that if there is some process that is happening that is going to build a proposal, require decision-making, advice to that decision-making for actual consideration, as opposed to feel like we're, rather than just being a little speed bump, like how do we really get that, but have the obligation to hold that with confidentiality in the same way that the council does. So I'm wondering, from an implementation standpoint, if there's some procedural things that could be built in that could foster relationship and communication when people are working together, the things that happen more positively, but also defining that obligation to provide information for advice to be able to be given in any meaningful kind of way. Like when we've had a couple of follow-ups, when there has been some difference in what we've provided for advice, and sort of the opposite of that happens, the discussion afterwards sort of is like it's enlightening, and how much more positive it would be for that to be at the front end. Be great for this to be an opportunity rather than a crisis.
I'd like to just add one item on that, which is you're talking about policies and procedures, and I think one of them could be looking at the orientation information that we as planning board members receive, which my orientation was like 7 or 8 years ago, but I don't remember there being a lot. And I know that city council gets an orientation. I would be curious about what they are oriented to understand our role as. And I would love for wherever this lands on that role clarity and our role as a board to reflect that, and for them to understand that as they're oriented. Right? This is the purpose of each of these committees. This is the relationship between council and these committees. And here's what the planning board does. Here's what you rely on them for. That feels like a procedural and process way to build in that and create that. I would also say, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a meet and greet during that orientation where current planning board members say, hi, nice to meet you. We're this other body that you never see. And I think that structurally, that would start to build some of those relationships and awareness in a meaningful way. Recently, we had former council president Chittum essentially override months worth of discussion, public workshops, decision making. It's our next agenda item. I won't belabor it. But it was pretty clear to me that he didn't know what we had put into it or what our charge was with that item. So a procedural item, I think, any time that we're being asked to make a recommendation, we spend some time naming what that recommendation is, not just reading the action like, I make a motion to make a recommend. In beyond that, we take time, and usually this staff also takes time to read back those recommendations or clarify from us where we are being really specific. And that is because we take our role seriously, and we are citizens, but we're professional citizens that I think have always understood how this body represents the city to a very specific and very important stakeholder group. It's not the only stakeholder group, but we understand that. And so I think one of the procedural opportunities, even if it's just a new cover letter with a recommendation that includes an action steps item, which is different than just a recommendation, like the action might be clarifying information or an invitation and advance notice that it's on the council agenda, or the opportunity to have there are other things that I think could be communicated into those recommendations. One of my concerns procedurally is that, and this is maybe the way the memo was framed, and I already see you kind of hearing a broader scope, which I appreciate and want to recognize, but I do think that there are times that a discussion, and sometimes there are discussions like tonight where it wasn't a public hearing, there wasn't a specific agenda item, we're not being asked to make a formal recommendation, and we've still said we'd like this relayed to the council. And I have to be honest with you, at this point I have no confidence, none, that any of the times we've made any of those comments, that if it wasn't a formal recommendation read back within the one sentence that was in the motion that we made, that all of that dialogue, unless some council member through the kindness of their heart is watching this video, that it died in this room. And as chair, it makes it really hard to understand why I don't just, enough of that discussion, let's just move it, no one cares. And that's not respectful of our time or our skills or our expertise or our talents, and we do all bring that to the table. It's frustrating. I also don't believe anyone on council is aware that they're not considering, that we had input, that there were good ideas or a question to be clarified. I don't think that communication is getting to them. And I don't know if that's, when I say I have zero faith of staff, I want to say, to be clear, I think we have great staff for the planning department, and I see that pretty consistently. I think the breakdown happens interdepartmentally and to this floor of administration. And I don't know that, I'm not assigning intention or malice, right, at all. But I do think the impact is that this board spends time and care and careful care and consideration on items that no one else even knows we've spent time on. That can't feel good for you guys because you're spending time writing these memos, listening to us, making sure the minutes are right, reiterating it back to us, and why. And so procedurally, and I say this because one of the concerns that I had specific to the Red Shop, specific to City Council that night, is we were asked to consider a disposition with almost no information. It has been explained to us in multiple different formats previously, but specifically again in this one, that it's real estate and confidentiality is a necessity. You've already heard a willingness many times future as well as procedurally tonight to make sure you know that we know, for us to swear an oath, that we understand confidentiality and for us to be allowed access to that information. What I am further concerned with, though, is that the notion that we're the guardians of multiple documents, we're applying that to the capital improvement process every year. We apply it to every decision that we're asked to make about a development, and you hear us with the Martell development say, we're aware that there's pedestrian issues. We're aware that there's pedestrian plans underway. How is that being coordinated? We take care to ensure that the information we have across different departments and across multiple different planning documents are being brought to bear on the decisions that we make. And we are asked to do all of that work because frankly, that's a lot of work. And council has to do that and understand the finance committee's role and school committees. And we're charged with our own separate piece and we take it seriously. And it is what I heard that night from the developer sitting next to staff was that there was a willingness to have a public workshop. We're up here talking about an executive committee that wasn't even necessitated. And that there is procedurally outside of what we do once it comes to us, there is procedurally within city administration and interdepartmentally the opportunity to say not, can we get away with this LOI? But more specifically, what would garner excitement and public support for a monumental milestone, and how do we include others in it? That is a completely different mindset shift, and it has been a successful one for 2 huge developments on Pine Street, where developers came in, publicly workshopped it with us, talked about it, encouraged the public to understand, gave us the information and us the opportunity to ask clarifying questions before they proposed anything concrete, which then got full support. And we have been doing that for decades. Public workshops, you don't have to set up the whole room and do a whole joint session. Have a public workshop, invite us to it along with the public. I'm not asking you to take extra steps or more time, and we have a long history of having done that really well under previous administrations with different department heads. We've had a phenomenal amount of staff turnover. Some of that historical knowledge, some of that muscle memory might have been lost. Again, I'm not trying to assign malice, but it felt unethical. Doing it sloppy is not a good answer for an investor who's thinking about putting millions of dollars into our city. But doing it because we think we can get away with doing it quicker, and that backfiring so significantly that we have multiple headlines about it is damaging. We have been asked to be business friendly by the council, multiple councils, multiple times. We hold that intention with public interest, common good, public safety, which was a big portion of tonight. I'd like to know that that energy is being matched by staff in all departments as well as the city council. And what I heard that night as I sat in this room and heard city council was that they wished they'd had that recommendation from us, that they wished they'd had the opportunity to meet with us in executive or otherwise. And when you have 2 decision-making bodies saying we want to be working together more closely, and we functionally are not, I don't think it's a disposition protocol that's going to get us there. I think it's about culture. I think it's about under-resourced staff. I get there's a lot of reasons, but it's embarrassing and it's unacceptable. It just is. And like Mr. Marcotte said, it is not the first. It was the biggest and most significant in my tenure on this council, but it is not the first.
No, won't be the last.
It could be the last. It could be the
wrong,
last.
but-
There is every opportunity, right, for it to be the last. And so I would love to see a future conversation here before we get to a joint conversation with City Council that pulls any documented statute required language of what our role is, what our intersectional roles are, what duties are for either finance or council to consider our recommendations. I'd like wherever this goes tonight and where we get to a final approved or agreed upon process and a new understanding, I'd like for somewhere between now and there to include what you're using to communicate across departments. Because one of the things that this very much felt like in the same bucket, completely different item, business, property, all of the things are different, but it felt the same to me, is when we had development, we had an application for a parking lot
Yeah.
at the mosque. We had an abutting neighbor and stakeholder across the street. Both of those had come to us at multiple times. But at the time that stuck, right, where we had actually had all the information and all that information was ordered and a decision and vote was reached, we had a member of the public saying to us very clearly that they had been told that this board and this body was the solution to their problems around occupancy, around approval of the process, that they had gone to, and everybody had said, now, I don't know that that's true or not. There was a lot of things said by that member of the public that night. And so, right, but what I will say is, it does feel like it is not uncommon that other departments are saying that it is planning, which is you and your staff, as well as planning board, that it's their purview. And you can go back to that specific night where we named, if you're concerned that it's over occupancy, that's code enforcement. If you're concerned about public parking enforcement at the public parking lot next door or the street, that's parking enforcement. If you're concerned about altercations around parking, that's PD. And the response was, they've all said it's your problem. And that us reviewing a complete application would somehow stop those issues from happening. And in that night, and this is a concrete example that I'm offering, in that night I said, it would be helpful to see, since it is a matter of public record, the email exchanges between that member of the public and the departments of which had given him that advice. That is a request that is still outstanding, and I have not seen. So when I talk about the way it's working between departments, I'm trying to give you very clear, concrete examples that you can research by planning board minutes and video of requests beyond a disposition that have been made for good reason. And one of the questions that I personally enroll would like clarified in the short term, and then as a result of whatever happens in the long-term final solution, when this board makes a request, not just a motion for a recommendation, but a request, can you ask city council this? Could we inquire about a meeting? Any of those items, should I be following up personally as chair of the planning board to Administrator Kainrath and copying the council on it so that request has been made? And then if council chooses to ignore it, that's one thing. And we've lived with that at different times. I'm concerned that we don't know that the ultimate recipient ever got the information. And should I just take it upon myself, and is that the way we're going to do it now and forever, or just in the short term? Do you have a recommendation on that?
The short answer is no, you shouldn't. You should not have to do that. You should be given the assurances that if you, as a body, make a request to another body, if it's the council, that we get that clarification from you. We know exactly what your intent is, what your intended impact is, and get it to that body.
But like as follow-up from the meeting that we requested it in, or at a future date when the council brings up something related and somebody makes an independent decision that those two dots should connect then. Because I don't think we've ever had a request or an action item or a follow-up step that was like someday in the future. We recognize that they might not consider it until someday in the future or never at all, but they won't know that they should be taking a minute to ask that question or follow up if it's not on their radar. And that is where my concern is.
Right. And so we'll take the blame on that one. If it's not getting into their hands because we haven't put it there, that's one thing. As long as we can show that we're putting it into their hands or that it's in front of their eyeballs, I can't make them read it. We can't make them take action on it.
Nor do
But
we
what I
expect
can-
that.
But what I can do is ensure that it gets in front of their eyeballs. And if we know what you guys are asking for, if we have that clarity, and that's on us for not double checking to make sure we know exactly what it is that you guys want us to do. This is not a recommendation. We are just asking this question. We would like this to go to the council. We get that action. We can draft something, and if you want it to be just, if you want to preview it first through the chair, we can do that. Or if you trust staff to just say, yes, you've met the intent of what we were wanting, put it in front of their eyeballs. We will get it in front of them.
Maybe you could just include that as correspondence in the next agenda packet, so we know that, like, for us, it's knowing what occurred and what happened. And there's, again, like, human error is very real. And I have staffed multiple committees and boards myself, and it is not about that. And I don't need blame to be taken. My point around it is, if the chair of the board, or if the board is copied on that communication to council, not only do we know it went, and we know when it went, but we know what's in there. And if something in there is like, oh, actually, what we intended, or is that what you thought we meant? I didn't realize. We can clarify that. And we're not doing it 6 months later and behind the 8 ball.
Right.
And so I think that would be a good protocol to consider.
Well,
And
I think
I think that would help.
I agree. I think one of the things that we struggle with, that we run into, is there may be times that you want something to get, conveyed to the council, but we don't have an agenda item for that council meeting night. So trying to find the right spot to put that, or how do we get that to them when it's not on a very controlled, very regimented agenda?
Why does it have to be an agenda?
And it doesn't, but that's what I'm saying, is we're just trying to figure out, where do we place that? Is it
I mean, it's
is it
a
an email?
letter,
It
like-
could be an email to them?
Yeah.
Correct,
I
exactly.
mean, it's like, this is information we want you to have. Well, so that's the alternative, is I start showing up at public, or we take turns showing up at public comment periods and delivering our message ourselves, right? Like,
Right.
it doesn't make it public record. It's not we're very much for transparency. It's
Right.
not about that. It's about timeliness and conveyance of information. I'd like to think that one of the, I'm going to guess 3 or 4 executive sessions where they were working with a developer and working with economic development on drafting out language in an LOI, somebody might have said, hey, didn't the planning board get all in a kerfuffle about this? Should we find out what that's about before we take this outside the room? Well, that's a good question. Can somebody watch that video or send it? I mean, it's all there, right? And I know for a fact, because a number of them sat up here and said it that night on council, that if they'd known, they would have asked some clarifying questions or not let it get out of executive session in the shape that it was in.
Yep.
And like, they didn't need an agenda item for that information to have been beneficial to them and our reputation as a city, and to the investor, to the project. Like, and this goes back to intent. It's not about like, well, how do we create a procedural spot that this fits into? It's information. Write a letter, man.
100% agree, and we're fine doing that. And that's what I'm saying, is we can get it in front of their eyeballs. I mean, they have the exact same kind of an email group that you guys have.
I've used it a lot
So we can get it in front of their eyeballs.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way where it correlates to something that they either have already seen, that they know about, or it may be coming up in the future. And so that's what I'm trying to piece together, is this one, yes, this example works because they're in deliberation in executive session talking about a specific project. So any information that comes in, it's going to be top of mind to them. They're going to get it. But if we're talking about something that may not have come up on their agenda yet, if you guys are just talking as a body about something that you want information to get to the council, and it's not something that they've discussed yet, I want to make sure that there's a correlation there with them versus just throwing information at them.
I don't think we're capricious. Hey, can you update the council and let them know my new favorite flavor is chocolate, right? Like, we're not,
Right.
again, we're pretty serious about how we take our duties and how we carry them out. And so I don't think that's an issue, and I don't think you should design to the bottom 2%, right? I do think what is more likely is, and what there is good history of, is this body saying, it feels like this has been an issue a couple of times, and city council should consider taking this up. We're trying to put something on their radar, and they might say, that's cute, little planning board, we don't really care about that. Great. At least they considered it and made a choice and didn't fail to make a choice from lack of information, right? And that's, whether it's parking or pickleball courts and the excitement that garnered and how they might want to consider investing in more pickleball courts. There are times that information, and not all of them require a meeting or an executive session or significant follow-up from us. And it's us trying to work with them to steward and plan our resources, land and financial, for the future. Because that's what we've been asked to do. That's literally, and so I don't think it needs a procedural milestone to fit into. I think it's, and if you want to plan for a future where this body is somehow capricious or not thoughtful about the time for you to relay the message or for council to read it, then say within 48 hours a memo's provided to council, and what they do with it's what they do with it.
Right.
We're not asking you to force anybody to open their eyeballs. We just would like it to get in front of them.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I don't think that's been done. I know I haven't presented anything, and like I said, that's why I said earlier, I know you're not looking for blame, but, bad on me for not doing that. And so I will be sure to do that going forward as a starter.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we can get things in front of them, just give them the information.
Okay. Is there anything else on this agenda item from the board? Nope. Okay. Will you make sure that part of what you bring to us is how we do appropriately deal with staffing concerns?
Could you say that again?
Yep. What do we do? If in the course of our duties, we are confronted with a concern about staff, what is the appropriate way to handle that concern?
Thank you.
If there is no other item D discussion, we'll move to item E. Okay. A memorandum on the no-name pond overlay and staff interpretation. I think this is you again, Director Connor.
I think I have all of them tonight.
Yeah.
So I think you and I had talked about this. I think I've received some emails from others, just kind of getting what happened? What's going on with this whole thing? It's gone back and forth. We ping-ponged this. Just to give you a lay of the land where we are right now, obviously, I'm assuming you all watched the council meeting if you weren't in attendance, and the second reading of the language passed, so we're just waiting the timeline for it to be implemented. Just to give you some background on it, obviously, we brought it to you guys based off an interpretation of the ordinance that staff was reading. We had some thoughtful and deliberate, discussions. We came up with some language. You guys came up with some language that we presented. The council rejected it, came up with their own language, and sent it back. In that interim, staff really started digging deep. We really started delving into the ordinances. And what we came up with, what Shelley and her planners came up with, was that maybe we misinterpreted that. Did we really need this language, and did we really need to go through all of that? And going through the definitions, we're looking at a buffer and what can be in a buffer, what is a buffer, and what we determined that, and obviously listening to all of you, I think some of you at the beginning thought, maybe this does fit. Councilor Chittum even, came to that conclusion that he didn't think that it was needed. it could have been, the permit could have been issued. So it taught us to, really go back and look introspectively of how we interpreted that. And so we feel like the added language that any work in a buffer will be done according to the best practices. We feel that adds to it, but the original language should not have precluded or prohibited rather any permit being issued. Is the short of it. And so we went through all of this. We feel like we strengthened the ordinance a little bit. I don't think we made it more murky, but going forward, taking into account Chapter 2's definitions of the buffer, that we're in the right spot. We don't foresee this coming up again in the future, but that's the short answer of how we got to where we're at, if that's short.
It's shorter than you read in the memo. I love that that's not a practice any longer. I would argue, and I am not entirely sure if you are or are not arguing this, because it's not clear to me, to be honest with you. It's helpful to hear how we got here, since we were along for a lot of that ride. I don't think much of that's a mystery to me. Glad to hear you're moving forward with the permit. One of the challenges that I had with Councillor Chittum's comments that night in this room for Planning Board was around the fact that there was this lack of clarity and that his language didn't actually address that root cause. I think we had some agreement that night that, yeah, it still wasn't super clear. I think that's what your first bullet point under item 4 is saying, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you. For you to have to go through all the steps that you went through, it's not clear. I'm just like, if it requires staff to go through an introspective and re-looking at all the definitions, then, and for that to have only been taken as a step before we reviewed it 3 or 4 times in here and made a recommendation to council and then reconsidered the recommendation that council sent back to us, and it took all of that for current staff to feel clear on it, I would argue that the language isn't clear and it still needs to be clarified, period. That
That's a good, that is a very good
if like,
argument.
hey, it took us 6 months, but now we're really clear in the language and no changes need to be made. As soon as this existing staff is gone, I'm going to argue that it's not clear enough.
Fair argument. It's a very fair argument. And
It's a long memo that says, yeah, it took us a while. And if it takes a while, it's not clear. And if it's not clear, we should still do our original work.
well, we also think that given number 7, the addition of number 7, it does clear it up. In our opinion, in our interpretation of it, yes, that first part could be a little murky, but once you get to you add number 7 to it, it then pretty much clears it up for you that yes, you can do this, you can do it in this buffer area, you just have to follow these principles or these best management practices. But I see what you're saying, and I agree that could it be cleared up? Do you want to make it as simple and get the legalese out of it and just make it as black and white as possible?
Because the person that needs to understand it in the very, very first place is the developer or property owner who's trying to figure out what their request is and whether they can even request it. That's
Right.
That's who it's.
It needs to be clarified so that a layperson who has no engineering or any of that stuff, environmental expertise, can figure out, can I do this here or can I?
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. If we're going to do that, we should probably throw out all of our ordinances and start from scratch.
Well, or as ordinances come before us, we should just
Right.
insist that they're
Right.
readable instead of trying to hover, which is, by the way, exactly what we're doing right now.
And the problem is they're written by lawyers.
Yeah. I feel like the which manual to look at and you must mitigate phosphorus, which is the addition that was made by council, assumes but does not state, like, because I asked that language question that night, That language assumes that development's okay and this is how you do it. But there was no change to anywhere else that says if development is, or it's just temporary development, or like, could a house have gone in that? Right? Like, none of that was clear on the front end. It just, I really think like a next generation 2050 planning department is going to say, well, it's clear that we've got to take care of phosphorus, but I don't know if it's a permeable driveway or a non-permeable driveway, or if they can even develop in here temporarily disrupting it all, even if, and those were the same questions that we had and tried to deal with. Maybe we could have dealt with them better. I don't know. I'm very open to that. And Chittum's language is great. Don't get me wrong. We approved it. It didn't deal with the original issue. So what are next steps regarding this item?
We can definitely sit down and have another workshop on it if you want, and we can try to come up with some even clearer language that gets to the same result with easier reading and really clear it up.
Thanks, Zoe.
I'm also still a little bit concerned about that definition of buffer, where it's being defined as the reserved portion of allotment to mitigate land use impacts on adjacent parcels, but then is very clearly used in the section we're talking about to talk about a
Trees
buffer
and
that,
berms.
yeah, things like that. But it's being clearly used to talk about a buffer where you don't want to disturb a waterway, which is different than adjacent parcels. So there's still some concern there for me as well. If we need to add to the definition of buffer, or if we need to use a different word than buffer and call it a setback or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, not to further muddy the waters, figuratively and literally. But
No, but that's right.
Yeah. No, we
That's
can. Would the board like to see some examples from staff to bring forward at another agenda item?
Yeah, I don't
And
know
just
that it needs to be a
kinda
big,
work.
like, we did a lot, and I'd be curious, it felt like the council followed Counselor Chittum's recommendation, and that Counselor Chittum's recommendation to throw out our work and go with the recommendation he created was because he had a very different understanding of what problem we were trying to solve with the language. And so I don't know that our language was bad or not helpful. I think that from what I understood from that evening, it was dismissed because it didn't strengthen the water protection and clarify on how to do it. And that's great. We weren't asked to do that, and
Right.
it's a handy, lovely outcome. But what we were asked to do was provide clarity, and I think that miscommunication or lack of understanding of intent and what we were asked to do or the goal of our work is what led to these kind of two disparate actions. And so it would be different if they said, we saw your recommendation and it really made it more confusing and onerous, and we don't like that it's prohibitive of development and we rejected it, and just mitigate phosphorus. That is not the feedback that I heard that night, and it's not in line with what work we did. And so that's,
Yeah, give us some time to come
you've
up
got
with
all
some
the
new
time in the
ideas,
world.
and
Maybe next 6 months sound good?
short of that, we'll have something
Time
sooner.
frame, right? There's like, great, some
18.
between, in 2026. Let's
W-
button it up.
January 1st, 28.
No, his mic's not working.
First
That
part of
didn't-
January.
Shanna, you made a comment, maybe in the earlier discussion, about recommendations having some kind of cover memo, so that this is what we're trying to accomplish by saying it in this way, and it's like, oh, but we didn't think about this, getting that kind of feedback back, and the council seeing that we're not addressing this issue, we're addressing this issue, would probably be helpful for them as well. So I want to just highlight what you said earlier, maybe being a good practice for us to take
Or
forward.
like desired goals or outcomes or intent of this agenda item on that cover letter.
I think that would be good too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to point out that when we do send ordinance changes, we include all of the materials we sent you with their packet, and then there is a separate memo that says you took a certain action and what the motion was, and if there were any specific comments that you wanted to have included. So usually, hopefully, they understand what you were given and what your charge was, but
Well, if the only way for them to understand that is reading multiple 3 or 4 page memos relative to the one agenda item, I would hazard a guess that no. Like, it's not that you're not providing it, they're not consuming it. And if we accepted, which, given that sometimes my agenda comes in a box for this board, like, just some good call outs on the memo. Like, the original request was to clarify the intent, like, it should be a sentence. It shouldn't require sloughing through a couple of memos to find it. And please do continue to give them your good work that we also spent time reading, but I don't expect them to read it. And that's fine, but given that reality, how do we work within it? Mr. Marcotte.
Having had interest in this item, and I read the council packet, I found it very confusing. If I had been a city councilor looking at that packet agenda item, I would have been confused. I wasn't even sure which way the recommendation was, what version they were actually voting on that night. I think I understand now, but I didn't from the reading. And speaking of recommendations that go to council, having sat there for 2 years, having previously been on the planning board and finance committee, and being on the receiving end of a recommendation, whether it's the LCIP or it's the budget, the finance committee does budget recommendations as well. I tried to make sure that that got read out loud. All too often, city council simply accept and put on file. The public has no idea what kind of recommendation that they were receiving from the 2 different bodies on those issues, unless somebody on the city council actually reads it out loud. Or on occasion, because council overturned the finance committee on several occasions while I was there, someone comes to the city council for the agenda item and makes a presentation. I remember one particular case where, unfortunately, I wasn't the chair that year, somebody else was, sat right there, made the best presentation of his life, and still got turned down, which was pretty bad, pretty sad, because it is supposedly a finance committee that's appointed with the skill sets to be on a finance committee as well as here. I assume that when the mayor and the approval of the city council to the members of this board think about the resumes, do they have expert resumes? Do they have a background that suggests that they know a little something, come from different walks of lives? And speaking of recommendations and ordinances and stuff that go back to the 70s, in the 70s there were a lot of attorneys on this board. At the time, I didn't think that was a great thing. Now I'm thinking, 1 or 2 might be nice to have. It really would. And we've had planners here too. And since I'm thinking of it, and we're sort of still on the no-name pond, I mentioned it during the discussion earlier. March 16th, was that the date? George Decio worked in the planning department here back in the 90s. He might actually have institutional memory on why the language says what it says with respect to no-name pond and the overlay. Because it was a huge deal at the time to have that particular overlay district implemented and all the contents, and whether any of it is murky or not. And he might have some perspective today.
We'll blame him.
Director Connor, do you have any clarifying questions to ask us about next steps related to agenda item E?
No.
Okay. If I might, I'd love to move us to agenda item 6, reading of the minutes, and seek a motion to adopt the June 22nd. Nope.
Could I sort of add like an F or an F?
Oh.
I had sent
Yeah.
at least one request to Director Connor, and trying to remember because I have 2 ideas in my mind. One was, when was the last time that the planning board gave a recommendation on disposition of Mill 5 and the parcel? It's got to be out there somewhere in the minutes. And the other one that I've since had conversation with Mr. Connor is, and seeing how somebody helped me with, I was supposed to bring a prop tonight, but I didn't. It was mentioned during the transit segment, RIMP. Somebody helped me with the.
Riverfront Island Master Plan.
Master Plan, okay. Yeah, the thing that we're supposed to have a lot of
Yeah.
involvement in. That's just one of the many different reports and studies and so forth that the city pays big money to have on a dusty old shelf on the third floor. I'd love to see a bibliography, not pull them all down and have a stack of them here, but a bibliography that, if that's the right word for it, where we can look down through, it's got a timeline, it's got the name of the report.
You want an inventory?
An inventory.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, I've got a few at home hanging around, and every once in a while I'll see something that catches my attention, and I wonder, wow, look at the year on that.
I mean, this
And-
might exist on the website already, and just sending that link to us.
Are you
Helpful.
speaking specifically to the Riverfront Island Master Plan?
No.
The comp plan and the Island Point?
No, every single report that may exist. The whole.
I'd like to dial that back just a little. Every single plan that might exist is a big tall
Well,
order.
I'm sure we don't commission
any
more than a-
economic development or planning documents or studies related to economic development, planning and parks, or transportation.
Things
and
that,
pedestrian use?
things that would appear in the comp plan.
Yeah.
Uh,
Does that scope help a
The
little
one that
bit?
caught my attention was a homeless study that said, end of homeless in 5 years, and it was probably 15 years ago. So the impetus to the request is, maybe I'm going to want to see one of those reports. And how have we met what that report was supposed to do for us? Because I haven't seen a lot of those materialize. We're here today. A lot of good ideas.
Killing the Riverfront Island Master Plan and the Choice Neighborhood Transformation Plan, both of those are like high success completion rates. It's two of them.
I wasn't sure what you said. You said killing.
When you said killing, I thought you meant
Oh.
that was bad.
Like we're killing
You
We're
meant it was
slaying,
like-
sorry.
Doing a great job.
Doing, yeah.
Doing a great
That's what I
job.
wanted.
Not killing anybody.
We're doing a great job.
I
heard
thought you
Mr.
meant
Marco as well.
decommissioning those
Yeah,
reports.
sorry.
No.
I meant killing in a very positive way, and I can see how that's confusing, so I apologize.
So would it help, Mr. Markart, if we started finding some of those reports, started pulling some of them up and sharing them with you and the board and asking, is this what you're talking about? Because I need to know exactly, are you just saying you want an anthology of every report that has ever been commissioned by the city?
Could we make it
Planning.
2,000 on, because 20, like, I can't imagine that super back is going to make a huge difference.
2,000 present's fine.
Put a time
I
stamp on
mean,
it.
it's probably 20, 30 listed items. I'm not looking for necessarily copies. Hopefully they exist somewhere. No, but just knowing that they exist, having like a reference library
Yeah.
of what may exist in the stacks.
And Director Connors, start with low-hanging fruit and say, this is what exists, this is what's on our website, these are the links that we have.
Yep. Yep.
While we continue to look for any specific that you would like, that you know exist, that you would like us to look for.
Right.
Like, give us a feedback loop opportunity
Yep.
before you kill yourself doing it.
That's my fear, is we don't know what we don't know. And-
Yeah.
And if
Well,
I
so
don't
then
know, if
let's
I don't know what I'm
see-
looking for,
Just tell us what you do know
Yeah,
and ask us to help
exactly.
fill in the gaps, and we can
All right.
collaborate on it.
we can start that. And then in answer to your initial question, staff did a search through the internal shared drive, both for the agenda items of the council as well as all of the planning board files. We did a search for Mill 5, and we also did a search for the actual address. What was the address? Mill Street? Something Mill, whatever the address was. We did a search for those two and got 0 hits in terms of disposition. So if anybody knows an exact date and time that one may have transpired, we couldn't find any in any of the files that there was.
Disposition for Bates Mill number 5, you're not going to find it because
I don't think it
Platts hasn't taken ownership of the property and won't until
Right.
the brownfields is done. So if you're searching for disposition, you won't find it. Grow LA did some data and some research and worked with some academic institutions to look at alternative uses and pathways to like restoring, saving, conserving. And that was presented at a public workshop for city council and should be available circa 2011? 12? But, and I know that might be a separate, but like there was a plan presented and a workshop with architectural renderings and student,
Are you
college
talking about when
students.
CMMC was thinking of
For
buying it?
that,
And it was, and
no.
the why and.
That as well, but no, before, just to get to the point where there was enough energy to say, holy, maybe we shouldn't wrecking ball that building. There was a request made and a workshop made to city council that engaged some academic, like college students of different disciplines, put together a plan. Yeah, Bates probably. You should work with Bates on their library of art plans that they've helped create for us. I bet you they keep great records of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as
Truly.
far as specific dates, you could look back to May, June of 2009
Yeah.
for the wrecking ball, because
Yeah.
that was approved before it was retracted either in December of that year or
Yeah.
January, after the new council was seated. There may have been a pullback on it. But I'm led to believe that there were recommendations in the past, whether they were increments of every one of the extensions, or whether they go back to that period when it was going to be torn down for a mere $800,000.
Yeah.
Which we'll never see again. And I think something would have happened in the last 17 years if it had been. Because it would have been everything except for the, I don't know if it's called the pump station or the portion of the building that's close to the
It's the.
Cross Canal.
It's,
Power station?
Power station.
Power station.
There were generators in there.
And they weren't sure whether taking that out would collapse the canal walls.
Yeah.
And there is something out there, speaking of reports and studies, there's a Shelley report.
A Shelley?
Before Shelley, I think, too. No, there's a Shelley report that talks about the spalling and the structural integrity of the cement and its rebar. And
Shelley, an acronym for something to do?
no, it's an actual engineering firm of some sort.
Shelley, congratulations. You own an engineering firm.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of the time. It's 9:12. Was your F enough?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the June 22nd.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the roll.
I have to try to remember
You just point
everybody's
at this point.
names.
I know, it's late. You're doing great.
Darren Gallant.
Yes.
Shanna Cox.
Yes.
Zoe Lidstrom, yes. Lucy Bisson.
Maybe I'll be contrary and say yes.
Oh my goodness.
Kidding.
Penthea Burns.
Yes.
Michael Marcotte.
Yes.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. A second?
If I may,
No.
really quickly,
Okay.
I'd like to pass out one more memo
Oh,
from
we heard this
Direct-
was going to come earlier in the.
Yes. you
Why
guys
was
beat me
that
to
not
it.
in other
You beat-
business? Why is it in
beat me
reading in
to
the
it.
minutes?
I just wanted to hand it out. I understand that
Stand
Darren-
up and hand it out, man.
Darren had asked for something on the vacant building ordinance that we had talked about.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Marcotte also brought up rental registration in the same vein. And
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly where it was going. It sounded like it was about,
There's 6 other microphones. Talk as you walk. Here you go.
One of these. Thank you.
How does this get onto the public record? So it wasn't in our packet, so it wasn't online. How could the public get this information? Or will be included in next time's minutes, tonight's minutes?
yes, we'll include it with the minutes and we'll include it in the packet. It's basically we'll get it up for the public.
Yeah, that's great.
We'll get it up for the public. I just wanted you guys to get an update where we're at. We're still the short of it is, we're still working on one. We went back and talked to some of the commercial developers, and got their feedback that, jumping into a commercial vacant building ordinance would not be, in the city's best interest right now. And so we're working on the residential piece of it. We're trying to align that with some future, commercial possibilities in the future for potential TIF districts or development districts in the city. But we're working to draft something. You can see on the back, the next steps are basically we'd like to bring it before you guys for your input in making sure that it ensures neighborhood stabilization and code compliance. We'll take your recommendations and feedback. We'll meet with the city administration, go over it with them, and then get it onto a council agenda, taking all of your changes, feedback, and recommendation to the council for them to enact.
Might I say that Zoe's brought it up before, in addition, that you consider putting in something about the short-term housing?
Sure. So,
Airbnbs and just to see where that might fit in there?
right, so that would fall more in line with the rental registration. And that's a different topic altogether that we're working on. That's under the clerk's purview, but definitely
Board
something.
Member Smith was here. She would say she has been looking for an update on that as well. I'll just bring her voice into the room and say, glad you're working on it, because you should be.
Right.
Okay.
So the rental registration piece, as well as the vacant building, are going to kind of run hand in hand, and hopefully we can get something to you here within the next couple months. But hopefully that answers your question. We are working on it, and we do want to get something out there for the council.
Super.
As well as you.
Thank you.
I think there was a motion and a second on adjourning. All in favor, just say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
I wish it were.